Drills and fundamentals.
Watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it.
On 93.5
Watch it.
and 107.5.
Boom, baby.
The Fan.
Kevin, you are deep in thought or reading or something there.
It's like, are you awake?
Yeah. I'm alive. I'm alive. I wanted to hear about the big TV news.
What?
Boo's big appearance.
Hey,
I was looking for it last night.
No, it airs sometime in May.
Oh, boy. That's quite the tease.
With no surprise, I felt bad, but Boo immediately hit under the cat. I will say they were very nice. But this crew comes in.
Crew? Wow.
Oh, that you should. I'll show you guys photos. I mean, it was a very elaborate light set. The guy had a big cart. First off, the guy says to me, again, I don't want to, but I go out, and the photographer says to me, as I'm getting ready to take them inside, he says, "Is my car safe to park out here on the street?" Well, I mean, it's where I live. It's kind of a backhanded slight, is it not? Gee, I don't know that I trust your neighborhood where you live here. Oh, okay. And they were very nice, but
no, not really. Let's keep this to about 10 minutes.
Right. They came in and started setting up stuff all over the place, and not really delicately, and it kind of freaked the cat out. So he eventually made an appearance after our interview, but he was a little camera shy. Like me, a little camera shy.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when you put your foot down and said, hey, can we, realize the cat is a little bit timid right now? Let's try and...
I kind of was like, guys, like, you're here to do a story on this cat, and you're like they were like, it was like a herd of rhinoceroses came into my house. It was
shoving the camera under the bed. Come here, Boo.
Yeah.
Are you saying maybe not a lot of cat experience for them?
Well, they're a cat show. I'm like, like my sister, I think I told you, was like, Jake, you probably ought to clean your place before they come. I'm like, they do stories on people with cats.
Gosh, it's a show on cats?
Yeah. Pet Pals TV, Kevin.
I can only imagine the demographic with a show on cats. Well,
I'm
good luck
huge.
to
You
Boo.
might be a weekly guest if they're in the demographic.
I'm huge with the Murder, She Wrote crowd.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very fitting for
Queer
that.
and that cat are very nice. I'd like to see them more.
Well, congrats to Boo.
Yeah, Boo yesterday making his television appearance. I'll be sure to let you know when it airs.
Yes. Boy, nothing says the month of May like the Indy 500 and Boo on TV. Good Tuesday morning to you. Kevin Bowe and Jay Query and Mark Dykton here. Last night in the NBA, it's one of those nights where I find myself just watching those games and thinking, man, there are people out there that really don't like watching sports. I mean, that was pretty vintage from LeBron James to close out the night, and then Jimmy Butler with, I think it's fair to say, one of the greatest playoff performances you'll see. It is round one. It is April. Dudes just don't score 56 as an 8 seed against the 1 seed and put them on the brink of elimination like that. And it was another reminder, Jake, and I had this last week of like, damn, it really blows the Pacers aren't in the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right. But the East is so stacked and the West is so wide open, though. That's the thing that's interesting. Like if Milwaukee gets bounced, which, they're a loss away from being bounced as the 1 seed. First off, and I'm 90% certain I'm correct on this, Scotty Johnston yesterday had an element of this on the pop quiz, so I think this is right. Miami would become the first franchise to win as an 8 seed against a 1, while also at some point in their history lose as a 1 seed against an 8. But Miami is good. I mean, Miami has been kind of hurt over the course of the year, and Eric Spoelstra can flat out coach. But let's not forget, I mean, Giannis not being there for a majority of those games certainly is a factor. But last night, Jimmy Butler is just, Kevin, we've said this about the Pacers, and I think there's hope that Benedict Mathurin eventually becomes this kind of a guy because he kind of has that swagger about him. But Jimmy Butler is just a dude. Like, to use the term that you hear sometimes in basketball, he's just a dog. Like, he goes out there and he's like, I'm the alpha, and I'm taking this game over. And I'm going to score no matter what way you want me. And he's not like some explosive athlete or a guy that he's just tough, man. He is just a junkyard dog, and he is just a tough nails player.
Yeah, he truly kind of flips a switch.
He does.
Like if you watched him post game with Allie LaForce, he was so composed, so calm. Like you wouldn't have thought for 1 second that dude who just scored 56, 21 in the fourth quarter, set every single Heat playoff record you could imagine. Hell, NBA playoff records as well. And he just kind of defines competitor. He kind of defines intensity, all of those things. And boy, he's had his moments with how many players from the Pacers? Remember when him and TJ Warren got into it a couple years ago?
When I say that he's trash, like I mean that. He's not even in my league.
You know what I laugh and I appreciate about Jimmy Butler is we've got a team in Memphis right now who is doing that talking and then not backing it up. And then when they lose 2 in a row in LA, where was Dillon Brooks last night after the game talking?
Yeah.
Where was John Moran after the game talking? Whereas Jimmy Butler backs it up.
You know, John Morant's an interesting one because ever since, and he's an unbelievable player, and I know that his health, he's been hurt as well, but ever since the incident with the suspension, he has not been the same guy.
Yeah, he had a great, game 3 or game 2 where he scored 22 straight in the fourth. And
Kevin, there was, now that's obviously, 22 straight in a quarter is unreal,
right.
But I'm not going to say that's the norm for him. But what I'm saying is like the nights of just being unstoppable, it was kind of night in and night out. And like he feels more like a Trae Young now. Like he's very feast or famine. And he was all feast for a long time there.
I just can't believe how stupid the Brooks comments were.
It's the best.
He's been awful since then. Desmond Bane was the guy last night. LeBron off the glass to force the game into overtime. So you can add that to the LeBron clutch reel. And really balance for the Lakers. Anthony Davis was pretty quiet last night, and LeBron didn't go off for 35. Austin Reeves continued to be really important for them, and they got pretty good balance, and the Lakers now go up 3-1. But
the thing about LeBron, though, Kevin, is that when a game is on the line, he's going to be there, right?
Yeah, he delivered certainly to send that game at OT, and then the Lakers won. I think it was by 6 or 7 in overtime. I do think the Benedict Mather and Jimmy Butler thing is just what you would hope for as a Pacer fan, as kind of a dream sort of comparison for him, because the rare thing about Butler, and I don't know how many guys would qualify as this, but he really takes his game to another level in the postseason.
Yeah, for sure.
And
that whole team does. You know?
Yeah. And I think there probably is a little bit of like, you've got to meet his standard around that time of the year. Obviously, he had a great bubble performance a few years ago when the Heat made their run there. But now they've got Milwaukee on the edge of it. And the Marquette kid and Jimmy Butler goes back to Milwaukee to try and win that series. It's a 3-1 lead for the Heat. Again, the Lakers go up 3-1 tonight. We've got 3 teams that can all clinch, all game 5s at home. Boston can clinch the series over Atlanta. Denver can do the same with Minnesota. And Phoenix over the Clippers. Like, we have 3 really good series right now, or at least like drama meeting intensity. I think Miami and Milwaukee qualifies as that from an 8-1 standpoint. Obviously, the Grizzlies and the Lakers would qualify. Kings and Warriors, I think, as well. The one bummer, Jake, God, can we turn off injuries? De'Aaron Fox?
De'Aaron Fox with a fingertip?
On a shooting hand.
And he's a
doubtful for tomorrow night.
This is a breakthrough series for him. You know what I mean? And now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh. It's Reggie eye socket against the Hawks. You know what I mean? Like, worst timing ever. By the way, good morning to you. It's a Tuesday. My name is Jake Query. That's Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton here as well. It is Kevin and Query here on 93.5, 107.5. The Fan, little NBA talk today, and then, of course, we'll get back into the NFL draft and the Colts. And, Kevin, I got to thinking about this. The New York Jets have managed in a couple of years to take every Colts approach at quarterback and bundle it into one. And I don't mean that as a knock on the New York Jets. I think it illuminates just how difficult the quarterback position is to nail down in the NFL. If you look at the Jets, they've always been looking for a quarterback. And if you go since the Favre experiment, you thought you had a franchise guy, initially, like in Sam Darnold, then that doesn't work out. You go back to the drawing board. You go with Zach Wilson. I'll give them credit, I guess, for immediately turning around and making the decision that Zach Wilson was not the guy. But you go from drafty to now back to aging veteran, albeit still good, and knowing that means that you are now going to be 2 years away from back to draftee again, right? But I mean, even then, and we're not even considering or talking about. I mean, you had like Joe Flacco mixed in there, other guys, but this just goes to show, Kevin, like it's not always a draft pick. Drafting a guy in the top 5 is not an automatic. You could be right back to square one quickly, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. There's no guarantee by any means. I do think it's the route that you need to go down. We've talked about it endlessly over the last few months. All 7 of the playoff teams last year in the AFC, all 7 drafted by their respective teams, all under the age of 27.
No, I mean, I get it. It's the preferred route for sure, but you could always find. You just never know, right?
The Jets are, I think, looking at it a little bit like the Rams, maybe a little bit like the Bucs from a few years ago. There's so much drama affiliated with Aaron Rodgers, so much of it self-induced drama.
No question.
But at the same time, you almost forget he was MVP of the NFL in 2020 and 2021. I mean, that was just 2 and 3 seasons ago. And it's not like last year he fell off a cliff. He certainly wasn't at that level, but it's not like he looked like Matt Ryan from last season. And I know we brought this up when the trade was first, whatever you want to call it, to agreed to terms, and then became official yesterday. I mean, Jake, the Jets were 7-4 at the start of December last year. 7-4
They do have decent pieces, right?
In the playoffs, yeah. And they just could not score the rest of the way. That AFC East, that division. It's probably not the AFC West, but Miami made the playoffs last year. We know what Buffalo is. I don't think New England is like a 4-win team or a 5-win team. New England made the playoffs just 2 years ago with Mac Jones. We'll see if getting his college coordinator and Bill O'Brien back does anything for him. You forget just how awful the Jets quarterback play has been. I mean, there was some wild. I thought I saw a stat yesterday where it's been 8 years since they've had a quarterback throw 20 touchdowns in a season. I mean, there's 17 games in a season. It's not that hard to throw 20 touchdowns.
Right.
So as long as Rodgers just kind of meets some fringe Pro Bowl baseline, you would think they would be in the playoff competition, which is the bare minimum that they obviously need. If, to your point, Jake, they're going to make that move in just a couple of years, they're going to be back in the we need a quarterback through the draft. I am excited. I don't know about you guys. And Mark, I laughed very hard at the Bears tweet yesterday when this was announced. Did you see it?
I don't know.
A large bear behind what looked to be some sort of zoo-like fencing, just waving goodbye.
Oh, yes.
Just a great gif of, obviously Aaron Rodgers out of the division once and for all. I am excited to see what Jordan Love looks like.
Yeah. I think people in Green Bay are excited to see what Jordan Love looks like, right?
I mean, look at the draft of Jordan Love's. 3 quarterbacks ahead of him. Burrow, Tua, and Herbert. And the one that went behind him in the second round was Jalen Hurts. It's a pretty good draft to be part of. Curious to see how he looks.
Kevin, were you surprised? Because I was, to your point. And I know that Aaron Rodgers is an older player, but he is still within very clear grasp of an era of very fine play. It didn't seem like a lot. Like the NBA and NFL are just so different in terms of what's given up for stars. You know what I mean? The NFL, wide receivers or running backs when they're traded, I mean, it's not big time players don't get traded very often, but when they do, very seldomly does it come with multiple number ones and all the mortgaging of futures like you see in the NBA. But what did they basically swapped picks. They lost 2 spots in the first round, right? And then they threw in 2 mid-rounders and a second-rounder that could be a first-rounder, right? Isn't that basically what they gave up for him?
So, yeah, they swapped 15 and 13. So the Packers go up 2 spots in round 1 this year. The Jets get a 5th. The Packers get a 6th. So let's just say those two cancel out. I would say where the separator is in the trade is the Packers get a second-rounder this year. So they'll get a second-rounder coming up on Friday night. And then next year, they'll get a second-rounder that could become a first.
It's just like the Wentz thing, right?
If Rodgers plays 65% of the snap. So assuming Rodgers does that, again, say that the 2 spots moving up in round 1 cancel out, the 5th and the 6th cancel out. The Packers got a second-rounder this year, a first-rounder next year. Do we think that's like if Rodgers just retires after this season? Is that why the package wasn't maybe a little bit bigger?
That's possible. I mean, because how much longer? The problem with Rodgers, aside from the age, that's the kind of dude that may just Aaron Rodgers could in November decide that some herbal tea convinced him that there's a greener pasture elsewhere, and so he goes and becomes a monk in Argentina. You know what I mean? Who knows?
Well, I wouldn't think there's a lot of places to hide in New York City.
That's another thing, too. I mean, he's a guy that's – it's interesting because he's a guy that's from the Bay Area, so it's like he's from big areas. I don't know where he grew up, but, he played at Cal. Where did he grow up? He's from California, right?
Yeah, then he didn't go to some junior college before Cal?
Did he really?
Thought he did.
I've always kind of liked the Jets franchise. Am I alone in that? I kind of like the fact that it's
I like the old school helmet.
Yeah, and it's the it's the boroughs, right? Like in New York, typically in New York, there are separation of fan bases. There's 2 cliques. There's 2 groups. Typically, with exception, but typically, if you are a Yankees fan, you are a Giants and a Rangers fan. And if you are and you're a Knicks fan. And if you're a Jets fan, it's Jets, Nets, Mets, and Islanders. So, the more blue-collar are the Jets fans.
Fireman Ed.
He left for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did he go on strike as a Jets fan? That. They didn't respect him.
Aaron Rodgers from Chico, California, by the way.
I was going to say off-the-field issues, maybe out-of-the-stands issues for Fireman Ed.
Is that what it was?
On that front. It's kind of wild.
I thought he got hosed. Come on.
In my opinion, that sucked.
No, that was solid.
Mark slightly delayed early on this Tuesday morning.
You had to long deliberate that one, didn't you, Mark? Deep
I
down,
had to
you
deliberate. I was mentally exhausted from having to process it.
I thought it was solid.
Wild from Todd McShay. He goes, interesting note as we prepare for night 1 of the draft. There hasn't been a draft night trade in the top 9 picks in the last 4 years.
I think that's going to
Would the last one have been the Colts?
Draft night trade. So the Colts and the Jets did that. If I remember correctly, I think it was St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, was it that early?
Yeah, it was kind of like Carolina and Chicago, how early they did it this year.
I think the Bears are trading down again. So I think that could happen.
Well, obviously he references here Arizona at 3. That would be the big one. Ross Tucker, by the way, going to join us coming up 8:00, right, Mark?
Yep, 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. Always enjoy chatting with Ross Tucker, so we'll get a little bit of a national perspective on things. Charles Davis tomorrow. He's part of NFL Network's coverage for the draft, so we'll chat with him coming up tomorrow as we, again, get closer to Thursday night. Round 1 Thursday, round 2 and 3 on Friday, 4, 5, 6, and 7 coming up on Saturday.
I like this text I just got. Hey, Jake, it's fun to watch all these teams make moves to get their fans excited, only to then lose to the Chiefs. Might be true in the AFC for a while.
Yeah,
right?
It's one of those things of what are you going for in the AFC? Are you going to try and be patient? Because I don't think Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen are falling off a cliff anytime soon.
I mean, it's pretty big log jam there. No question about that.
Just the AFC quarterbacks. If you look at the conference right now and all these quarterbacks, just start in the East, okay? Allen, Tua, Rodgers, Mac Jones. Go to the North. Burrow, Sean Watson, Kenny Pickett, and I guess we'll say Lamar Jackson. Let's go to the AFC West. Mahomes, Herbert, Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo. And the AFC South, which in this case probably is the outlier, clearly. Trevor Lawrence, Ryan Tannehill, and we'll see what Houston and Indy do coming up on Thursday night. I've never seen a top 9 or 10 in the AFC look like that.
Is Kenny Pickett the guy?
I thought he had a decent rookie season. If I were Pittsburgh, I would say, all right, here you go in year 2. Yeah. See what happens here.
I mean, what's his ceiling? Give me the guy who's
Derek Carr.
Chad Pennington?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more dynamic than Pennington.
Derek Carr's probably a pretty good call.
I know we can fall into the trap of recency bias, Jake, but I don't recall the AFC looking like this and this young.
Totally agree.
This young.
It's why the Colts, it's like, oh, boy. Right?
Is that why you go Anthony Richardson Thursday night? Because if you go Will Levis, you're just swimming with the middle of the pack, potentially, whereas Anthony Richardson could get you to the front, could get you also to the back.
I again think you go with the safest play. That's the corner they painted themselves into.
You don't look at it as this is your chance to be in the top 5. You take the biggest swing possible. You've got Shane Steichen, this strong quarterback resume.
No, I here's what I would say. You took a roll of the dice on Carson Wentz, you lost. You took a roll of the dice on Matt Ryan, you lost. You took a roll of the dice on Phillip Rivers, didn't do too bad, thought you were going to get a second roll, didn't get it. You've put yourself in position. You took a roll of the dice to some extent with Sam Ehlinger, you lost.
I don't know if you can compare Sam Ehlinger as a 6th-round pick.
I'm not, Kevin, but what I'm saying is they believed, and they hijacked their season because somebody within that building believed in a chance to be the starter. And it totally derailed. It was a boulder in their stream of the season. What I'm saying is they put themselves in position where they have to reduce the most margin for error. I don't disagree with you that others might have a higher ceiling, but I think you go with the one that you feel has the least whiff potential. As opposed to the most hit potential, the one that has the least whiff potential is the position they've put themselves in.
If you're going to whiff, don't you really want to whiff so you're back up there?
Well, I mean, that you're going to be, if you whiff, you whiff. Doesn't matter whether you look like Reggie Jackson and you're down on one knee or you're left standing there looking and arguing whether or not it was on the outside.
Speaking of whiff potential, how big of a whiff are you taking with the Mayo tomorrow morning?
Excuse me?
You heard me.
Hear that plop?
Yeah.
That's
maybe 2 plops.
No,
it's like a cannonball. You
guys can say this all you want.
It's like the Memorial Day cannonball to welcome in the pool for the year.
Have you seen Stand By Me?
Yeah.
It's a great song. Mm-hmm.
It is a good song.
It's a good movie.
Are we allowed to say the name of the kid?
It's been a while, so go ahead.
The pie eating competition where the crowd starts chanting his name?
Sure.
And he eats the pie?
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens?
He recycles.
That is correct, yes.
Uh-huh.
Just prepare yourself. It's all fun and games. All fun and games.
A lot of whiffs last night for the Miami Marlins, right? Did you guys see the hit that broke up the no-no?
I knew there was...
Spencer Strider into the 8th. I mean, that ball was thrown literally in the dirt. Blooped out to left field. Nothing like the no-no when you're up 11-0.
This leads to my age-old question. Kevin, you are a fan of the Cincinnati Reds, correct?
Walk-off last night. We're back. The A's also won last night, by the way. We'll get to that before the morning checkdown. In
Mark,
extras.
You are a fan of the Chicago Cubs, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's say, this is kind of a tough one to say because both those franchises right now are circling, but if they were legitimate players and a normal franchise, and you went to a game in Kevin, you got 2 tickets, 3 tickets, 4, you're going to take the whole family to Great America Ballpark, go see the Reds in early June. Mark, you're taking the whole family, Wrigley, go see the Cubs early June.
Mm-hmm. They might be paying me to come.
Midway through, like the 6th inning, you realize that your team, the Reds, in your case, Kevin, the Cubs, in your case, Mark, are being no-hit. How far into it do you say, look, I know it's my team, but I really want to see a no-hitter here?
What's the score?
2-0.
I think perfect game. You start rooting for that. No hitter, probably not.
Yeah, I'm with Kevin. Because the Cubs had a perfect game going into the 8th last week, and it got broken up on just the guys ran into each other in this little bloop single, and that's what broke it up. I was like, oh.
Because we're approaching, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're approaching a pretty long time since the last perfect game. I think it's one of the longer stretches.
29 perfect games in history.
I think it's one of the longer stretches, if I'm not mistaken, in MLB history.
But honestly, if it's midway through the 8th and your team's getting no hit, aren't you like, it would be pretty cool to see a no hitter?
The Reds might be in the thick of it.
I mean, I've been to probably, and I'm not kidding you when I tell you this, I'll bet I've been to 400 major league games in my career, in my life.
Boy, that's a lot.
Well, I covered them. I mean, I covered the Cardinals, right?
Yeah.
So there's however many home games right there, and the road, some of them. I've never seen a no-hitter.
Last perfect game was August 15th, 2012. Felix Hernandez beat the Tampa Bay Rays 1-0.
There's only been, there have been fewer than 30, right?
11 years. That is a pretty darn big gap. You talk about MLB history, the Rays continue to set standards that we have not seen since the other century. Go back to the turn of the century from 1900. We'll chat about that today. Again, Ross Tucker, 8 o'clock. James Boyd from The Athletic at 8:30.
23 perfect games in MLB history.
Yeah, I mean
23.
So you have to root for that, right?
1880.
Yeah, I would go perfect. Probably not on the no-no, but I don't know. Maybe I'm acting like I'm a bigger fan than I really am. Good Tuesday morning to you. Kevin Bowen, Jake Query, Mark Dykton right here, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
.com.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Quite the night for Jimmy Butler last night. 56 points, 21 in the fourth quarter. The Heat continue to be really the story here of round one, which is saying something with how much drama there is in kind of some other series. Miami now up 3-1 over the Bucks. Giannis did play last night. He had 26, 10, and 13. Just your ho-hum triple-double for him. But Jimmy Butler made all the plays Miami needed down the stretch. Again, they go up 3-1. And the other game last night out west, LeBron James with a little kind of floater off the glass, pretty much at the buzzer to end regulation, sent the game in overtime. The Lakers then won in OT over the Grizzlies, so they go up 3-1 with that series shifting back to Memphis.
LeBron, by the way, 22 points and 20 boards in that game. Tonight it's Atlanta and Boston, Minnesota and Denver, and the Clippers in Phoenix. All of those, by the way, are 3-1 advantages for the Celtics, Nuggets, and Suns, respectively.
So all the home teams, right, going for the clinch there?
That is correct, yes. Yes, that's correct. I had to look. Is Phoenix at home? Yes, they are. Phoenix
4-5 matchup.
Major League Baseball yesterday. Giants over the Cardinals 4-0. It was the Braves over the Marlins 11-love. As Kevin had mentioned, Miami flirted with being no hit. Ended up with 2 hits total in the game. Reds over the Rangers 7-6. Break up the Reds. 6-game losing
streak.
Break
up the A's.
Is over.
If you want to lead off with the A's.
How about
time.
the A's, man? 11-10 over the Angels, right? Went for 2 late. That game was in.
They might be buyers at the deadline.
Kevin,
now.
you popped some champagne last night. Your
It
Reds
might
and the
be
A's.
buyers
It was a rare night.
at the deadline.
Popped a little mayo. Popped a little champagne.
No mayo. No, that's enough to talk
Save that
about
for tomorrow morning.
Orioles. When did we decide this mayonnaise thing's happening tomorrow? I was not in on this meeting, number one. And number two, what is the significance of tomorrow?
I think we discussed it. You're like, I have TV. I got to go.
Discussed. DISGUST is correct, yes.
It's going to happen.
We banded together as a team.
Banned also a proper term when talking about Mayo. Orioles over the Red Sox 5-4 yesterday. Cute fella continues to win, and the Diamondbacks 5-4 over the Royals in our battle for PBR.
So does Scotty have it on the pop quiz already? The Rays are 14-0 at home this season. It's the modern baseball record. Just your classic, and obviously the team name fits itself. The Detroit Wolverines in 1886 won 18 straight.
They had cool helmets. For what that's worth.
It's nice to see him, 150 some years, and we're still talking about the Wolverines in that area of the state.
It is not on the pop quiz. I'm looking at the pop quiz at the moment. It's not there.
Interesting.
Scotty's slacking, I think.
Indy Fuel tonight. They are home for Game 3 of their series, down 2-0 to Toledo. They'll have Game 3 and Game 4 up at the Coliseum here this week, so if you're looking for something to do, you can check that out. And yesterday it became official, the Aaron Rodgers trade. Jake, you thought maybe one more pick thrown in there?
I mean, I was surprised of the overall haul, right? I mean, yes, they moved up 2 spots in this year's draft. They get a chance for, a second rounder and then an additional potential first rounder.
Yeah, they get a second rounder this year. Next year they have a second that could become a first.
Yeah, I mean, that for a guy that was MVP 2 years ago?
Yeah, but with how much money he's owed, and
the drama, right?
The drama, I might retire. I think it's just. I'm surprised they got what they got for him. To be quite honest, I thought they got a little more than I projected they would.
Who was more? Here's the thing: who do you think was more relieved to see Aaron Rodgers leaving Green Bay? The other 3 teams in the NFC North, or the Green Bay Packers?
I think the Packers.
Like, Packer fans, I think, were like, just get out.
Yeah.
Enough, right? Yeah. Last night, by the way, in the NHL, it was the Devils over the Rangers 3-1. That is now a 2-2 series. Maple Leafs over the Lightning 5-4. You had the Lightning, right?
I have them, yeah. They're not doing so great.
Well,
the front runner. No, they're down 3-1.
Correct.
It's fine.
Toronto up 3-1. Vegas 4-2 over Winnipeg last night. That puts the Golden Knights up 3-1, and then tying the series at 2 games apiece. Seattle over the Avalanche.
Aaron Rodgers will be back in the NFC
Avalanche.
North anyway, because he's going to go play for the Vikings. You got to follow the Brett Favre.
That's right. Paul Allen can get upset.
Brett Favre doing
I
here?
just wanted to play that soundbite.
I know the Grizzlies are, frustratingly pissing a lot of people off right now. Desmond Bain, though, last night had 36, the Indiana native, with that one. He was easily their leading scorer last night. for the Grizzlies. All right, we come back. We'll get more to the Colts draft conversation. Ross Tucker going to join us at 8. We'll have James Boyd on at 8:30. So, the national perspective coming up with Ross Tucker at 8 o'clock. Good Tuesday morning to you. Kevin Aquari right here on 93.5, 107.5. Mark, will you bring the mayo in?
Yeah.
Is it a spoonful?
A nice dollop, I'd say. Nice dollop.
I can hear the clump into the coffee.
I am confessing to you, not only a blatant disgust for mayonnaise, but what I would list is essentially a hatred.
Jake can either do the spoonful in the coffee, or he can just do the spoonful straight without the coffee. Because you're not a coffee guy, right? So you just want to do the mayo on the spoon?
I'm not doing it anywhere. If you get that mayo...
I mean, you're going to get a whiff of it. I'm going to be right over there.
Just the sight of it.
I'm going to let you uncork the cap, take a big look at it, take a whiff.
I'm starting to sweat right now over the thought of this.
Here comes the airplane, Jake.
More horrific.
Mayo-covered airplane.
I guess you did mention Wednesday.
you imagine the straight
not-
spoonful of it?
Still not happening.
I might do that just to spite Jake, right in front of him.
Mark just right on his nose, just wearing it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be tomorrow. In honor of Will Levis. Is he still the odds-on favorite to go 2? Does Vegas still have him overwhelming?
The odds shifted. I can look though.
Gosh, is that Houston? Is that a trade up?
Almost has to be a trade up, right? What do you think? Oh, we'll have John McClain on, longtime Texans reporter, on Wednesday. We can ask him.
So it's changed a little. Yeah, it's definitely changed. Now I'm looking at plus 160 Levis to go number 2 overall. This is Jake. Your thoughts on this from Bill? Let's get into Anthony Richardson this AM. Best athlete coming out of the position, faster than Michael Vick, massive arm, just needs 2 to 3 years to develop. Can't pass on this scary of an athlete. Will Levis is bust. Jeff George 2.0.
First off, this is not the topic, I realize. I don't think Jeff George was a bust. He might have been for the Colts because they were a total disaster around him, but a guy that played a dozen years in the league and led the league in passing yardage and went to the playoffs in his career for multiple franchises, I don't think you could list as a bust totally. I get it. He wasn't the franchise guy at number 1 that people expected. Listen, I totally understand with Richardson. I understand the intrigue, the upside. I think it's interesting that this is not a guy that anybody talked about as an elite level college quarterback a month and a half ago. To me, that says something, right? I mean, Kevin, when Clemson and Notre Dame were getting ready to play each other, and you and I were sitting here talking about that, and we were talking college football, how often were you thinking to yourself, like, man, that quarterback at Florida is legit. I hope the Colts can get him.
Yeah, honestly, the intrigue on Richardson was probably more like September. I feel like it was like, oh, did you see what he did against Utah? Like, this is Cam Newton, Heisman Trophy, blah, blah, blah. And then it just...
Right. But, I mean, physically speaking, I get the fact he's incredibly intriguing. But again, 2 to 3 year away, are people going to be willing to wait for that? I'm not saying Levis isn't 2 to 3 years away. I don't think there's any quarterback in this draft that's immediate plug and play, and I'm not saying the Colts even have the roster around that they're a quarterback away. But does Chris Ballard want to wait 2 to 3 years? Maybe he does, because maybe that gives him another 2 to 3 years. Maybe that's part of the smart play. I mean, Chris Ballard has been a master. The one thing that Chris Ballard's been the best at as a general manager in the NFL is kicking things down the can down the street and buying himself more time.
Yeah, the one thing with Richardson that I've kind of forgotten about is, there is a Ballard comment that he makes quite often, and honestly, I think we've seen it with the next pick series. He tells his scouts a lot, show me what this guy does well. Like, let's not necessarily pick all the holes in his game. Show me what he does well. And then to use a Ballard quote from Friday, he said on Friday how Shane Steichen's kind of broadened the field to these quarterbacks. So will he get a little bit enamored by what Richardson does really well and really uniquely and say, Shane can tap into that?
But doesn't he also say, I want to see the game film? I don't necessarily want to see the practice workouts. I want to see the game film.
We've gotten to the point, and again, the guy's been at the helm for 7 years. You can probably find comments that talk yourself into either.
That's fair.
Which is probably is what makes this equally as maddening and difficult to try and project.
I just think, Kevin, I'm going to be over-analytical here. I know that's stunning, okay? But I think that dynamics change in a workplace no matter what you do for a living when you start to see different tea leaves from your boss. And I think that Chris Ballard, from the time that he arrived on West 56th Street, was praised and promoted and preached by his owner, which is his boss, about the promise he had and the acumen he had and the rarity that he had as a general manager and as a football executive. And I'm not saying that Chris Ballard became overly arrogant of that. I don't think that he mishandled that praise at all. But I think that it offered a security blanket for him that gave him time and bought him time and allowed him to be patient and methodical in the way that he built his franchise, because he felt like, listen, I've got another year to work on this, and I don't need to push in urgency because my boss has granted me a lot of patience and a lot of latitude, and he continues to talk about what a great job I'm doing. So I'm just going to keep doing what I do. And then he basically not once, not twice, but 3 times went out and got veteran quarterbacks that were going to be the final piece to push his team into playoff contention and into the postseason, and strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. Now all of a sudden he starts hearing different chatter and whisper from his owner. Not necessarily completely indicting him, but for the first time Chris Ballard has started to hear, I want to see some results now. Instead of, I trust the plan. I trust Chris's vision. Now it's, I'd like to start seeing some change. So Ballard knows, okay, the time is up. The governor's off, the time is up, and the pressure's on now, and I got to go for it. And I've got to make sure that all of it, that a year from now in our annual report, I can turn into the owner, here's the progress we made, and by that, I cannot afford to, Chris Ballard cannot afford a year from now to go to the owner and say, but our quarterback is still 2 years away from being really good. Just trust me. This is, well, no. You heard me a year ago, Chris. I said I needed to start seeing results, and I didn't mean the seed of results. I meant the blossom of them. And so I just believe that for that reason, Chris Ballard, as intrigued as he may be by some prospects, in his mind, subliminally and subconsciously, he's got the 2 little voices on 2 different shoulders, and the one that tells him to play it conservative and go with the safest pick, to me, is the one that's going to win out.
Yeah, I don't know how Jim Irsay will properly evaluate this coming season. When you think about when the Colts have started rookie quarterbacks, obviously Andrew Luck, 11 wins, speaks for itself. Tremendous rookie year. I mean, can you imagine if Peyton Manning would have had that rookie year in 2013 or 2022 when social media was prevalent? A 3-13 year,
right.
Throwing the most interceptions in NFL history for a rookie QB. How do you react to that? How do you evaluate that? I mean, that's probably a bigger storyline to get into in the coming months, but that'll be one, particularly if they take one of these, longer-term guys, that'll be heavily debated. Mark, you said Jonathan on the line?
Jonathan, yep.
Jonathan, what's up, man?
Hey, good morning. What's up? Why did I get married on April 27th, 2013?
Is this a Bjorn Werner joke? Did he get drafted on April 27th, 2013?
No, I was watching some of the draft that day. I don't think it was him because it wasn't the first round day, but I don't know what I was thinking in terms of being a guy who loves football. I'm happy to celebrate my 10th anniversary with my wife, don't get me wrong, but the reason I called is in the scenario that quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, and then Richardson's the only one left. Does Ballard just take him, do you think, or trade back? Because I don't see him moving up, and I don't see him as a Richardson guy who has patience with a gamble like a 50-50.
Jonathan, here's what
be great.
First off, happy anniversary.
Yeah, are you going anywhere for your 10th?
1933 Lounge.
It's a good place.
Nice.
Good
place.
Good place, yeah.
Okay, so give this scenario to us again. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and you said Will Levis are all off the board, 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, I would think that Arizona trades back with somebody like Detroit. Maybe,
then Richardson's your guy at 4.
You still think? Yeah,
yes.
Well, that's what I would hope, too.
I think Ballard looks at these 4 quarterbacks, Jonathan. I am, and you can put this on my tombstone because I'm so sure about it. You can put on my tombstone, and hopefully it'll be years from now, but you can put, was dead set on the fact that in 2023, the Colts stayed at 4 because Chris Ballard felt the difference 1 through 4 in the quarterback evaluation was negligible enough that he would be happy with whichever one he got at number 4, as opposed to having to be aggressive to take one out of the litter.
Boy, that's an expensive tombstone. That's a lot of
That's a lot of
words.
Letters are expensive too.
And then like an 8-point final, it's like Jake Query lies here. That's your left there.
No, not lies. I'm being truthful.
8-point font.
Well, because of all the words he just put on his tombstone. Where you're fitting everything else, there's no good.
It's going to be difficult.
Monument. It's a monument. It's not a tombstone, Mark. I don't know if you have you not seen what I've already.
It should be a shrine.
Have I ever told you, by the way? And I find this brilliant. Now I'm a thoughtful guy. I think ahead, right? It wasn't random and Noah built the ark. I was just having this conversation with somebody yesterday. I've mentioned this before. People think it's weird. I think it's brilliant. I think it's smart. It's not uncommon for people to buy a plot ahead of time, correct? Mm-hmm. So why not buy your own casket? I've said this before. You're going to spend eternity in it. Why not get one that you're comfortable with? You get to pick it out. You break it in a little bit, have it in the house, maybe put it in the basement, watch movies occasionally on Sundays, sitting in your casket. Then when your time comes in the family, you're grieving, everybody's worried about you, and then they don't have to go through any process because they're like, you know what? Jake thought ahead. He's got that casket in the basement, and whoop.
Do casket stores frown upon, like, if you try to climb in and, like, I'm going to be in here. Can I test it out?
Don't think it's like Brookstone and you're sitting on the furniture and they're,
the massage chair.
Doing the reclining chair.
I'm telling you, I think it's brilliant. Anyway, as you were.
I think to Jonathan's point, what would be interesting under that scenario, and again, he's got Young, he's got Stroud, he's got Levis all off the board. This is probably a little bit too wishful thinking on the Colts' part, but would you get a team like Seattle sitting there at 5 that might be worried about a team that is looking for Will Anderson or whoever is the top defensive player in the draft that might want to get the opportunity to draft that first defensive player? If the Colts only have to trade back one spot, theoretically Seattle comes up from 5 to 4, they get that top defensive player. The Colts then slide one spot back, still get Richardson. Again, Seattle could look at it and just say, no, the Colts have got to draft a quarterback. They're not going to move back at all. That would be something to look into. I will continue to reiterate kind of what I was saying yesterday, and I know this has nothing to do with the Colts at 4, but I think when you get late into round 1, I think it is really, really important to keep an eye on that draft board in the mid to late 20s, and if there is a prospect at a premium position, that you trade back into round 1 and get that guy, particularly at wideout, because I think we saw it last year with how much money A.J. Brown in that trade, the money for Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, Terry McLaurin, all those guys. This is a little bit into like the NFL rules, but basically how it works is a first-round pick gets a 4-year rookie deal, and then you have a 5th-year team option. Second-round picks and beyond, it's just a 4-year contract. So when your second-rounders hit, it's great, but you got to pay them earlier. And so that's why I would look at it and say, hey, if I can get, particularly a wideout, when we're seeing how much money they're making and how early they're kind of tapping into that from a contractual standpoint, if I can get that on a, relatively affordable 5-year deal instead of a 4-year deal, I do think that is something to try and explore, because enough about the roster depth. To me, you need to have more top-end guys, and the Colts just don't have that, particularly at the positions that matter the most. So I know we're getting away a little bit with this topic about, what do they do at 4? What do they do at 4? Yes, that obviously matters, but look at the Peyton Manning era, Jake. When you drafted Peyton Manning, there was no Reggie Wayne, there was no Dwight Freeney, there was no Edgerrin James or Dallas Clark or Bob Sanders or Robert Mathis. You want to talk about virtually the entire core you then built with? None of them were here.
It was Marvin Harrison and Marshall Faulk, though.
So Marvin and Tarek Glenn, I would say would classify as probably the 2 guys that stayed a part of your core.
Right.
7 or 8 of them were obviously not here. So you need to keep in mind the supporting of the quarterback as you move forward, not only in this draft, but certainly future
Here's
drafts.
another thought, Kevin. This year, if you have a rookie quarterback that has a nice rookie quarterback year, a nice first 3 years as a rookie quarterback, with the supporting cast they have, the Colts' ability to be competitive is a what score, and is that a greater or less score than if you cement pieces around the quarterback position and go for another year or two with the veteran leadership of Gardner Minshew? Which gives you a better opportunity to win? Spending your assets on getting your top asset on getting a rookie quarterback and then slowly building around him, or going ahead and using your assets to build core and plugging in Gardner Minshew?
I don't know if I'm totally following. I would say Gardner Minshew.
In other words,
7 wins. A rookie quarterback, 4 or 5 wins.
Right. So what I'm saying is, though, is there any chance that the Colts look at it and go, look, we've got the number 4 overall pick, and then we've got a second round, whatever. If we go defense at 4, and then we go, or we go playmaker or whatever else, and we go ahead and run it with Gardner Minshew and try to build around him, do they think he is a guy that can keep them in the mix or in a playoff chase because it's a weak division, than going and putting in a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson and having those guys try to run with the predominant core of what you have right now?
No, because I think if you start winning like 7 games, now you're drafting 11 or 12 when it's time to take that quarterback. And you're too much into the middle of round 1, too much into the purgatory stage. You had a horrific, disappointing, embarrassing season like no other. I think you got to capitalize on that. Ross Tucker joins us next.
And 5, The Fan.
One of our favorites going to join us right now. You've heard him all with us before. In season, a little bit of out of season. First time really getting deep into this 2023 draft with them. Former NFL offensive lineman. You hear him, color analyst, Westwood One, CBS, little Philadelphia Eagles action as well. He is Ross Tucker. Ross, I don't know actually if we've talked since the hire of Shane Steichen. I've said this before. Richardson, Levis, Stroud, we can debate them to the nth degree. What I'm most bullish on for the Colts is Shane Steichen and his quarterback history. What were your interactions like with Shane, and how should Colts fans feel about that hire?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a home run. I got to know Shane pretty well the last couple of years in Philadelphia, and extremely impressive, both in the production meetings for the preseason games, in my one-on-one interactions with him. I mean, they did things that I'd never heard of before. You know, I would see him, and he would mention to me things I said on the preseason broadcast. And I was like, you watched the TV copy? Like, you know, usually the coaches don't watch. And he said, yeah, it was actually part of their intercut, because there's certain things you can get from the broadcast that you can't get from the coach's tape. So I thought that was pretty cool, because I was wondering why he and some of the other coaches were laughing and joking with me about some of the things I said. You know, late in preseason games, I can try to be entertaining because it's late in the preseason game, but he's impressive. I mean, 2021, midway through the year, Sirianni gives him the play calling duties. They go run heavy and make the playoffs as a result, with, you know, a banged-up team and Hurts really his first full year as a starter. And then I've never seen a quarterback make a bigger improvement than Hurts 2021 to Hurts 2022. Now, part of that was best O-line in the league. Part of that's they bring in A.J. Brown. You know, part of that was just Hurts being in the same offensive system for a second consecutive year, but you still got to give a lot of that credit to Steichen for Hurts, which is why I think the Colts are in a really good spot to draft a quarterback at 4, because I feel like Steichen on some level just kind of went through this and has like a template, especially if he drafts, you know, Levis or Anthony Richardson. I think he has a template for how to try to maximize that guy's potential.
You know, Ross, coaching brilliance can come really in a number of ways, but let's talk about, in Shane Steichen's case, in your observation, is he a coach, and I'm going to give you two scenarios. When they're looking at a quarterback, are the Colts going to be better off to pair with Shane Steichen? Is his strength going to be he works with a quarterback that has to intellectually be able to grasp everything that Shane Steichen is giving him? Or is Shane Steichen the type that himself intellectually adjusts to coming up with scenarios that are best for the quarterback's needs, as opposed to the quarterback having to do what's best for Shane Steichen's requests?
Yeah, I understand the question and where you're coming from. I guess I would say I always feel like that has to be a symbiotic relationship.
Right.
But where it kind of goes both ways. I will say it feels like Steichen in back-to-back years did a fantastic job of maximizing the skill set of the quarterback and the talent of the people around him.
Yeah, so he kind of adjusted game plan to quarterback as opposed to asking quarterback to adjust approach to what he wanted.
Oh, there's no question, yeah. I mean, especially if you look at his history with Rivers and other guys, like he designed it for the quarterback. And I'll say this, the Eagles had one of the most talented teams I've ever seen last year, certainly the best Eagle team I've ever seen. They just didn't get done in the Super Bowl. But I would say almost every week it really felt like he was ahead of the defensive coordinator. You know, I mean, he was just ahead of him. I mean, I loved his mix and matching of play calling, I mean, you guys can look it up. The amount of first touchdowns they scored on first drives was crazy. It felt like they had a lead in every game. Just really, really impressive. I'm not surprised he got a head coaching job. I think that the Colts, who, as you guys know, were ridiculously thorough, I think they made the right hire in general, but in particular because they're going to take a quarterback at 4. And they want to get the most out of that young man as soon as possible. And I don't know who has a better track record that was available right now than Steichen based on what he did with Hurts, which is why I've kind of thought all along, and maybe I'm wrong, and you guys probably know more than I do. I'm not there. But I've kind of felt all along that they were going to draft Anthony Richardson because I feel like, you know, a lot of the same things Steichen did with Hurts, he can do with Richardson in terms of, you know, having an emphasis on the run early so that the offense can be productive while his passing, you know, gets up to speed. And then you combine both of those, and it's almost impossible to defend. It really is. I mean, it's almost impossible to stop. If the quarterback knows what he's doing, they've got good weapons, and he can run the way Steichen did it last year, it's a beautiful thing to watch.
It's at Ross Tucker NFL on Twitter, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. He's with us right now here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Kind of expanding on that point, Ross, and I mean, certainly I've probably gone back and forth, and at this point I'm just like flip a coin. The Colts are extremely tight-lipped on whether it'll be Levis, whether it be Richardson, who knows about the C.J. Stroud fall, et cetera, et cetera. Let's play out the scenario that Levis and Richardson are both on the board at 4. Stroud's gone, Will Anderson's gone, Bryce Young's gone. Given Steichen's background, which is another question, how much say will Steichen have? To me, he should have a lot of say. You would go Richardson over Levis under that scenario?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Levis thing is kind of weird to me because it's like if you want a quarterback who's ready to go and a polished pocket passer, I feel like you would take Stroud. If you want a guy with high upside and ability, I mean, Richardson has a stronger arm, he's a bigger body, and he's faster than Levis. So, like, why are you taking Levis over Richardson? Because he's got a little more experience? I don't know. I mean, is that even a positive?
Honestly, Ross, you want to know what I think is part of that answer? I know you're asking rhetorically, and I know this sounds crazy. Will Levis got rave reviews from the Manning family at the Manning Academy. I really think that carries weight with the upper brass of the Colts, the top level.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that. That wouldn't surprise me. I guess the one thing I do like about Levis is that he had to go through a lot of adversity last year because Kentucky's offensive line was not good and his weapons weren't as good. You know, they lost those O-linemen. They lost Wan'Dale Robinson. But I struggle with some of the sacks he took. I struggle with some of the decisions he made. You know, I don't care how bad the rest of the team is around you. You still don't have to take those sacks. You still have to throw those balls. And I don't know. I've heard the same thing about the Manning Passing Academy. Yeah, I don't know. And I might be wrong. I think Levis drops. I think I've done a bunch of mock drafts with people, and Levis never goes in the top 10. Nobody ever pulls the trigger on him, which I think is telling.
7-year NFL veteran Ross Tucker. You hear him on Westwood One, CBS, Philadelphia Eagles. He's with us right here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Ross, if you were wearing the Nick Caserio GM hat at number 2, obviously implications kind of goes without saying here in Indianapolis with a team in your own division, seemingly a quarterback-needy team. What are you doing at 2, assuming Bryce Young goes 1?
Yeah, that's a tough one. First of all, what I'm doing is telling Lovie Smith that if he loses that last game, that he gets to keep his job. and then probably firing him anyway. But I'm not winning that last game.
Yeah.
Was that against you guys? I think it's against.
Yeah. They were going to build a statue if Lovey would have lost that last game outside of NRG Stadium.
Unbelievable that happened, and the ripple effects of that. I still say I'll believe that the Texans don't take a quarterback at 2 when I see it. These reports that they could take Levis, that makes me think that they really like that they know that the Colts like Levis and they want him to trade up. I mean, if the Texans don't take don't take a quarterback at 2, there's no chance, guys, they're going into next season with their current quarterbacks. So then are they forced then to trade from 12 up to like 3 with Arizona to get a quarterback, or do they sit there at 12 and take the 3rd or 4th guy? Or do they trade for Trey Lance from the Niners because DeMeco Ryans was there the last couple of years? I don't know, but I'd probably take Stroud, but I'm skeptical of Stroud. I really am.
Because of the S2 or because of other stuff?
What? No, not the S2.
Okay.
Because when I've watched him, he knows what he's doing. He gets rid of the ball. He processes well. It's more the people around him. I mean, you watch Stroud and Ohio State play the last 2 years. First of all, 2 years ago, nobody had ever covered Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson once the whole season. I mean, he's throwing touchdown passes to guys that are open by 10 yards in the end zone.
Now, can you say the same about Young?
No, I don't think you can. Alabama did not have a dominant offensive line this year, and Alabama didn't even have good receivers this year. And even the games that Alabama lost, Bryce Young still produced. No, I think it's different. I mean, Bryce Young had to show a lot of pocket mobility, had to make a lot of plays on his own. He did not have a supercharged roster around him this year, whereas Ohio State, both their tackles might go in the first round. It seemed like CJ had a clean pocket every play, and he was just throwing the ball to Marvin Harrison Jr., who's unbelievable.
Right. Yeah.
The NFL is not like that. The NFL is not, you have much better players than anybody else you play. You never have a muddy pocket. Your receivers are wide open. I just think it's been a major adjustment for these Ohio State guys, Haskins and Fields, and it's just way, way harder than it is for them at Ohio State.
Is there a player? Ross Tucker's our guest, by the way. You can see him on Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL. He's on the Payless Liquors hotline. Ross, is there a player because one of the things we don't talk about, and it's not applicable in Indianapolis per se, but this whole conversation about the 4 quarterbacks and the spots and everything else would probably be drastically different if there were non-quarterback players at the top of this draft that were franchise pillar players that were can't miss. Are there guys like that we're overlooking that can be taken up top?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a huge Will Anderson guy. He would have been the number 1 pick in last year's draft. Now I've seen Peter King had him in his mock going number 6. That's unbelievable. I mean, that's unbelievable to me that a kid might lose over $10 million because he had to go back to school. Didn't get hurt, didn't do anything dumb off the field, didn't play bad, but might lose $10+ million. I mean, I would sue. I would sue somebody. I mean, that's unbelievable. Jalen Carter was the best defensive player for Georgia the last couple of years. I don't know about the off-the-field issues. There's some concern there, but there was concerns about Warren Sapp and Randy Moss and a lot of really good football players that when they had to show up, Lawrence Taylor, when they had to show up on Sunday and played, they showed up on Sunday and they played.
Again, Ross Tucker is with us. You hear him all over Westwood One, CBS, Philadelphia Eagles, 7-year NFL vet, and the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Ross, I don't think it's a large section of Colts fans, but there are some that have mentioned, hey, if you got QB going 1, 2, 3, you take that top defensive player at 4, and then you gauge, okay, where is Hendon Hooker going to fall the rest of round 1, potentially trade up from 35 in round 2. Your thoughts on that suggestion and or Hendon Hooker?
2 things. One would be it really depends on how they feel about Hendon Hooker, and it really depends upon how they feel about whoever the 4th quarterback would be that would be available in that scenario. Man, I think it's probably going to be hard for Steichen to not get a quarterback that can run. And Hendon Hooker can't run. Stroud doesn't really run either. I think Steichen just realizes now, after the Hurts experiment, just how valuable it is to have a quarterback that's part of them, which is why I believe the Indianapolis Colts will take either Will Levis or Anthony Richardson at number 4 on Thursday night.
Yeah, because Levis, Ross, am I correct in saying this? Levis can run a little bit as well. I mean, I don't know how much they designed that for him in Kentucky, but he can, right?
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, I'm a Penn State guy. I live in Central PA, and I remember McSorley got hurt, or Clifford, one of them, and Levis came in, and they just ran the ball all over Ohio State with Levis. Now, he's not like, Lamar Jackson, but he runs pretty well, and he's a moose. He's kind of more like, like a Hurts or a Cam Newton, more of like a power runner, but he runs pretty well. Let's put it this way. He runs well enough that Steichen could incorporate all that stuff in the offense and really put the coordinators in a bind.
Ross, before we let you go, we are just a couple of weeks away from Mother's Day, and I don't want to speak for our entire audience, but that can tend to sneak up on some of the mail section here. And I believe you've got a suggestion for us on that end?
Absolutely. A buddy of mine started the company. By far the best Mother's Day gift I've ever heard of. It's called myfrontpagestory.com. Nobody knows what to get their mom, and nobody really knows what to get their wife, the mother of their kids a lot of times. Go to myfrontpagestory.com. You talk to one of their writers for 10 minutes while you're driving home from work or whatever. They write the most unbelievable story about your mom or your wife or whatever. Guys, it looks like it's on the cover of the newspaper. It looks like it's on the cover of the Indy Star. Your wife, pictures of her, your mom, pictures of her and the kids. And I've just seen it so many times on videos now when they're opening it up and they're like, what is this? And you say, Mom, I want to do something special. So I had a story written about you. Like, that just sounds odd. It sounds like the coolest, most sentimental gift ever. My sister and I got one from my mom, and she read the quote out loud from my sister, like, I wouldn't be the woman I am today without my mom. My mom just started bawling. She started crying. In good tears, which is what you want. And then
right.
my mom had to hang it in her house. Like, you give your mom this, it's a framed thing, cover of the newspaper. They're going to hang it up in their house. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving. It will be a reminder to your mom or your wife every day how much you love them. The gift that keeps on giving. Just trust me. myfrontpagestory.com. myfrontpagestory.com. Best gift ever, period, but definitely for Mother's Day.
Look at this. The more you can do right here. Ross Tucker with us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Ross, always enjoy the conversations, man. Enjoy Thursday night, and hopefully we catch up to you before the season starts.
Absolutely. Should be fun for you guys. Take care.
That's Ross Tucker right there. Again, Payless Liquors hotline. The C.J. Stroud take, Jake, I think is an interesting one. At times when I've brought that up over the last few months, I thought I was nitpicking a hair with Stroud. But I do think it's a debate of just like, for 11 of their 13 games, they were a 3-touchdown favorite. Bryce Young didn't face that in the SEC, given it wasn't normal Alabama and it's the SEC. Obviously Will Levis didn't face that. Obviously Anthony Richardson didn't face that. And then devil's advocate would say, okay, that's fair. Yes, Ohio State had superior talent week in and week out. But in the biggest game of the season, they scored 41 points against the best defense in college football in Georgia.
The reality is, Kevin, I mentioned this one time. I remember we were talking about quarterbacks. When Peyton Manning was coming out, when Tom Brady was coming out, for that matter, when Drew Brees was coming out, it was kind of easier to determine. There was the learning curve was still there. Don't get me wrong, but the style of play from the college rank to the NFL, because of the rules and everything else at the time before the rules changes, was similar enough that you had a better chance of being able to predict based off of the college game, even with disparity of talent for the receiver position, who was going to translate from college to pro at the quarterback position. It is much harder to do now because of the way the game is officiated at the receiver position and the advantage that guys have at the collegiate level and like for Tua, at Alabama when he was throwing to receivers that were 2 steps ahead of everybody else, and Ohio State. And I think that was a big question mark about Trevor Lawrence as well at Clemson. He was throwing to guys that had gaps and windows that don't exist in the NFL. And that is a huge learning curve. And that is something absolutely that should be explored. And with Stroud, it's a very fair point. It's a very accurate point of concern. I think he's good, though, Stroud.
You think the Colts should be listening to Peyton Manning's Will Levis affinity that much?
Yes. Not because of Will Levis, but I think they should listen to Peyton Manning. I think it was more Archie Manning than Peyton, though, right? A little of both.
I thought Peyton had like the genetic comment. He genetically has everything you want for in a quarterback. I know Peyton's track record with coaches has not been the greatest. Adam Gase probably being the pillar of that endorsement. It's curious, interesting how Chris Ballard or Shane Steichen would view that thought process. James Boyd from The Athletic will get a little bit of more of a local angle joining us here in a few. For now, let's begin that morning check down with the star of last night in the NBA.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
What sport would we like? Sorry.
Long shot, good!
I was going to ask what sport you wanted to start with, but I guess that answers it, right?
I think he was the star of the night. He deserved, not Kevin Harlan, Jimmy Butler, that was. He deserved to be the leadoff there. 56 points last night for Butler. That is a career high. It's a Heat playoff high. 21 in the fourth. Jake, we talked about it to lead off the show. You get into these cliche words at times. To me, Jimmy Butler just defines, like, competitor, intensity. Remember the story of him at T-Wolves practice that one time? Just yelling at everybody how dominant he was. Correct. And just taking a bunch of random dudes.
Didn't he take all the second stringers or something? And yeah,
just absolutely dominant out there. He did that last night and then was super composed postgame with Allie LaForce. The Heat are up 3-1. Correct if I'm wrong. Have we ever had a 1 seed lose like this? If it's 4-1?
Boy.
That big of a margin?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think. Well, to be honest, Kevin, like when the Heat were the 1 and New York was the 8, I think it was only a 5-game series back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, we extended
and that's
to
the
7
same
a
as
few
the
years
Denver, the Dikembe Mutombo Sonics Nuggets series. So, yeah, I mean, yes, dominating. Again, with Milwaukee, you got to take with a grain of salt also the fact that Giannis is clearly the straw mixing their drink, and he wasn't there for a couple of those games. But last night he had a triple-double, and it still wasn't enough, right?
Historic night for Jimmy Butler. LeBron James continues to do pretty historic stuff himself. 20 points, 20 rebounds. First person to do that in a playoff game since 2004. LeBron with a shot off the glass to send the game into overtime. And then 117-111, the Lakers pull away to beat the Grizzlies. They go up 3-1. The Grizzlies, a lot of bark and a little bite?
That's a real fair way of saying it.
Dillon Brooks not doing any post-game comments again?
No post-game comments from Dillon Brooks. No post-game comments from Ja Morant either. Dillon Brooks, since chirping, 7 of 23 from the field and 2 of 13 from
Grizzlies
3.
have been a fraud all year, haven't they?
It's a little disappointing because I want to like them.
Yeah.
They have the indie connections. They are the smaller market team. I don't want to root. I mean, I probably like LeBron more than most. I don't necessarily want to root for the Lakers, but here I am.
I feel like the Grizzlies are one of the fastest 180s a lot of people have done.
It's a great point, Mark.
In one season. Like, this team's awesome.
Well, like I told you, everything. Ja Morant is an unbelievable talent and super fun to watch. But when all of the stuff started taking place with Ja Morant off the court and all of the drama around that, their season has absolutely circled since then. That was the boulder in the stream of their year.
Like, by all accounts, Desmond Bain, Indiana guy's a great kid. I'm 30. What do you have? 36 last night. Like, you like to root for that, but no can do on that front. Tonight, you got 3 home teams all trying to clinch Game 5. It'll be Boston against Atlanta, Denver and Minnesota, and Phoenix and the Clippers.
Major League Baseball yesterday, Giants over the Cardinals 4-0. It was the Atlanta Braves over Miami 11-0. Only reason I mentioned that is because there was a no-no going for quite some time for Atlanta. As a matter of fact, Spencer Strider went 8 innings with no runs, 2 hits given up in the ninth. And Atlanta gets the win nonetheless. Reds over the Rangers 7-6. They are starting a parade, actually, in Cincinnati. It's supposed to be tomorrow because they snapped a 6-game skid.
And the A's are going to do a parade as well.
A's 11-10 winners over the Angels in 10 innings. Cute fella 5-4 over the Red Sox. The Diamondbacks 5-4 over the Kansas City Royals. J&B's got the Royals in our PBR race, but they're already out of it, right?
I mean, he and Kevin are vying for the bottom tier.
2-horse race, right?
Yeah, by 420.
Speaking of PBR, okay, that's good. Speaking of PBR, the Tigers were over the Brewers 4-2.
Colts starting their voluntary minicamp here today with Shane Steichen. You're allowed to have an early minicamp as a first-year head coach, so obviously Gardner Minshew will be the one kind of leading that. Just a couple of days this week, and then things will ramp up a little bit more on the field, middle of May, end of May, and then into June as well. When we come back, James Boyd from The Athletic, he's got his mock draft out. We'll chat with him about that.
Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
All right, our next guest from The Athletic, James Boyd. I know he was up late last night consuming some NBA action. James, pretty darn good for a Monday night, right?
I'll take it. It was a fun night. And, obviously I'm glad I'm not having to cover that game because I was pretty crazy, but they can have that one.
If I gave you Boston or gave you the field in the Eastern Conference right now, what would you do?
I'm going Boston.
Totally agree.
Good to me. Yeah,
I'd take Boston versus the field of the league. Wouldn't you, James?
Oh, man. I don't know about that one because the lights looked a little bright for Jason Tatum in the finals last year. I think he shot in the 30%, something like that. That was pretty awful. So he got me a little shook there. But I'll take him in the East to get back.
Who wins the West? I mean, Denver does look good, but...
Yeah, I mean...
Phoenix back on track?
Yeah, I think that star power really, really matters. I get that they're playing a lot of minutes over there, and you got questions about their health and things like that, but it's pretty scary to look over and look at a team when, Devin Booker is, the first option. And KD is the second option some nights. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. We were just talking, before we get to the NFL, we were just talking about this, James. I want your thought on it. I think John Morant's an unbelievable young talent, an exciting player, but it feels like the off-court drama with him and then his time away just jolted through that locker room, and now all of a sudden you've got to assess whether or not you want to – obviously you build around that talent. I get it. But do you agree that everything started circling for Memphis and their year started going south when all of that drama, it just became too much for them to overcome?
I don't know if it was that. They still played pretty good without him. They played, good when he came back. I think it started when he had that comment where he's like, I'm fine in the West. And it's like, wait, what? You didn't even make it to the Western Conference Finals last year. So I think it was a bit of like too much too soon, and he became pretty arrogant pretty quickly, which is fine. I mean, I don't care. You can do what you want when you're that good. But the rest of your team isn't that good. That's the issue. So you got other guys like Dillon Brooks and, talking kind of crazy, and it's like, wait a second, you guys can't back this up. And then, unlike Draymond Green, who everyone loves or hates, he talks, win or lose, ejection, no ejection, flagrant foul, no flagrant foul. He talks. He stands on what he says. But you can't be like those guys and talk so much, and then you lose and you say nothing. And then, you got fans out here who think that is okay, but just a reminder out there to everyone out there, yes, you have to talk after games. It's in your contract. It's not, a mental health thing for them to take some time to themselves. No, you lost the game. You got to talk. It is what it is.
James Boyd will try to be multitasking, I think, on Thursday night a little bit with the NFL draft underway and a slate of NBA games as well. Speaking of star power, you have come out with your mock draft and a little bit of tease. I would assume looks like you're taking a pretty big swing there at number 4 overall.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson goes number 4 to the Colts. I think that there has been a lot of smoke screen put out the last few days. I still, think that there's a fair amount of mystery with Houston, which I think is pretty accurate. But I really would be kind of shocked if they just don't take a quarterback, C.J. Stroud, no less, at number 2. I mean, your team's pretty depleted. He's a really good player, and I get the S2 stuff, and that seems to be all rumors and, stuff to maybe hurt his draft stock or whatever. But, I just think that they really need a quarterback on top of other things they need. But if, for whatever reason, you pass on him, I think the Colts should then look to him to be their pick at number 3 or 4 if they move up. But if it all kind of, falls the way it's been projected the last few months, I would expect that Anthony Richardson goes over Will Levis to the Colts just because of his upside. And, boy, does he have a lot of it.
Okay, I wanted to try and get a little bit deeper into why the Richardson selection. Upside, I guess anything Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, Jim Irsay have said, anything that really stands out about the Richardson resume that all of a sudden has maybe pushed him, ahead of Will Levis or anyone else?
Yeah, I think his floor is higher than people give him credit for. I think that
because of his running?
Yes, because of his running. I don't think he's as raw because he has the running ability, which forces defenses to be less, how do I describe it? Less complex. It's very hard to really scheme up a lot of, in-depth things. You have a guy who just break free with his legs. I mean, you see Jalen Hurts and you see, Lamar Jackson. There's a lot of like single, high safety type of things because you can't get too creative because you're scared that if you, do that, you're going to leave a guy basically unaccounted for who can just run up the middle of the field for 30 yards. So I think that he's further along in that regard. I think that his, even some of his decision making has been, look at the tape, he's improved throughout the season as a one-year starter. Now, I'm not saying he's going to come in right away and start and be a franchise guy. No, I think that there's going to be some time there that you have to start Gardner Minshew and hope that, Anthony Richardson can just kind of learn. I do think he should play at some point throughout his rookie season if the Colts take him. But, again, I don't think that he's just this, oh, my gosh, his completion percentage is terrible. Don't play him. He's horrible. And it's like, wait a second. He also had 9 rushing touchdowns, and he's pretty electric in the open field.
James, do you think that we sometimes, good or bad, either hype up or penalize a guy by the association of the player whose career is complete they most remind us of? In other words, does Anthony Richardson get held back a little bit because people see him and hear comparisons to Cam Newton, and then they think about the end of Cam Newton's career and think, I don't know, that's not – Cam Newton wasn't a great leader, et cetera, and then he gets held back by that?
Yeah, I do think that's the case. I also find it funny that, there's always, just the comparison that you see. It's like, Will Levis, is he Josh Allen or Carson Wentz? Is Anthony Richardson, Cam Newton, or Lamar Jackson? I'm like, wait a second. Why are you saying this? Like, is this literally just based off of, like, their skin color? And I'm not even saying it's like a racist thing. I'm just saying, is it just a, innate thing where we want to literally look at them and see someone else, like, look like somebody else? So I think that that's always a little bit funny. But I do think that, if anybody in this draft class became Cam Newton, that's a win. Cam Newton gave you a shot at the Super Bowl. He was the best player in the league for a year, which is, more than what most likely any of these quarterbacks will become. I'm not saying that they can't do that, but there's also, just this thing out there that we'd like to remind everyone that the football is really hard in the NFL. It's very difficult to become a franchise quarterback. So, again, if he's being compared to Cam Newton, that's not a bad thing. You want to pick guys based off of what they could become, at their peak and hopefully sustain that. You don't want to pick a guy and be like, oh, if he gets there, it won't last. Like, if you're the Colts, you haven't had anybody to, like, worry about that with anyway. So you want to get a guy who you believe has some potential and then worry about that down the line.
Again, it's James Boyd from The Athletic. He's got his mock draft up here heading into Thursday night right now on The Athletic. I want to go back to Friday, Chris Ballard's press conference. Certainly, I guess he wanted to use more of the dancing term and not the lying term with some of his comments. I'll leave it pretty open-ended. Doesn't have to be necessarily quarterback-related. Anything stand out to you from Ballard on Friday? Because, I did think he touched into some, other positions of need as well, some draft depth. But anything stand out to you from what he said on Friday?
He mentioned how deep the tight end class is, and I'm a little cautious there because I'm like, would you really draft another, rookie tight end? Because in my opinion, if you did, it would be a guy who's a blocker, like a Darnell Washington if he drops, or, a Payne Durham who is basically, made Jack Doyle the guy he wants to become at the next level. So if that's the case, then I would think that Mo Ali Cox would probably have to go, just because he's the oldest guy in the room, and you want to see what you got in your young guys before you obviously move any of them. So that's the only thing that I kind of picked up on. But the rest of it, I mean, let me be completely honest. I was like, hey, man, like, it's Friday. Let's get this over with so I can enjoy the rest of my weekend.
You and me both. I'm glad you said it. I was thinking it.
I thought it was hilarious you asked him if he lies, which was hilarious. It was like asking your kid, like, do you lie? And, sitting up there saying no, and it's like, no, we know you probably lie. Like, he dances, and I'm not saying he's going to come out and blatantly lie or anything like that. I'll give him credit for never really just saying something that's completely, false. But I'd imagine that there's a little bit of fibbing just because that's what the job entails. I mean, if I had to, I would have got up there and told you, yeah, I'm lying to all of you. So there's that.
Yeah, tight end is an interesting one for me. Jake and I were having this discussion yesterday. I think pass catcher, like grouping wide out and tight end together, is definitely a need. Like, I feel like you've got to add somebody. I'd probably go a little bit more towards that speedy wide out. I've made the basketball analogy, like, you got enough power forwards in that room. You need to get kind of a point guard in that wideout room, just from a body type and a speed standpoint. Tight end, I don't know if I'm banking on hey, Jelani Woods just wasn't utilized enough last year. Drew Ogletree's coming off the ACL. I still think Kylan Granson can give you something, but I would probably go wideout over tight end, even though that doesn't really match up with what we're hearing from a draft depth standpoint.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that goes back to the pick that you made in the first round. You pick a quarterback, I think that you should prioritize the offensive line and also getting him some, players and playmakers. So I would expect them to really look at wide receiver. Also because, you lost at that position group as well. Like Paris Campbell didn't come back. You got Isaiah McKenzie, but he's not, in my opinion, a true starter wide receiver in the NFL. So you need someone else who can help you, particularly in the slot. So, if you can get a guy like Cedric Tillman, Jonathan Mingo, Jaden Reed is someone I really, really like. I think that he brings a lot of versatility to the wide receiver room if he were to be drafted. And also, it'll be fascinating to me to see how, Shane Steichen's identity kind of blends itself throughout the rest of the offensive picks. I do think that that's going to be a factor, and we might not see the typical Ballard, traits or numbers and things like that. Whereas Shane Steichen says, "Hey, I need this guy so our offense can look like this."
James, give me the player or players on the Colts roster that people might be surprised that you get the feeling the Colts might be taking a second look at and maybe even drafting insurance at that position that the average fan probably thinks is totally secure.
Left tackle, Bernard Ryman. I get it. He was pretty solid. He got better throughout the back half of last season, but I don't think that he was good enough to just say, hey, this is yours. And, you're free to have it, and no one's really going to, compete for that spot. I don't know if they go more veteran, free agency. It's hard to sign linemen of a high caliber when you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a plan in place that they can, definitively see. But I think that that's the group or that's the position where I'm like, it's not just his. I don't think that he was at that level last year. So that's probably my choice for sure. And then I also think that linebacker is another one because of the, Shaquille Leonard coming back from his back surgery. He's not even really running right now. I'm not too, concerned with it at the moment. I think if we get to, training camp and, August and he's still not out there, then everyone obviously can get, start asking more real questions like, is this guy going to be back to who he was? But you do have to get some insurance at linebacker because you lost at that position with Bobby Okereke leaving, and also you're banking on Shaq being back. But if he isn't, which I'm sure if he's listening, he'll tell me I will be, but if he isn't, you got to have somebody else there, for insurance.
Okay, James Boyd with us here from The Athletic. James, I'll end with this. Let's say for some reason Bryce Young goes 1, and then all of a sudden it goes defensive player. Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, flip them, whatever. Houston and Arizona can't move the pick. They decide to go that side of the ball. So the Colts are sitting there at 4 with Stroud, Levis, and Richardson all on the board. Do you think the Colts would have much debate with that, or would they run up there with C.J. Stroud's card?
I think they would have a pretty good debate about that because of Shane Steichen's ability to work with dual threat quarterbacks and the way he helped Jalen Hurts develop from being a questionable starter in the NFL to a top 5 QB. Obviously, the weapons he has helps, but I think that the jump that he made from 2021 to 2022 was very significant, and Shane Steichen was his offensive coordinator both seasons, so that counts for something. However, I think that there's still a pretty significant gap between Stroud and Richardson and Levis. So if that were to happen, I get all the talk about upside. Everyone loves upside until you don't reach it. So I think that floors matter as well. Maybe not as much, but C.J. Stroud has a pretty good floor for being an NFL quarterback, and also he still has a pretty decent amount of upside as well with his mobility and his accuracy and things that he could do right now today to help your football team. So I think that if that were to happen, you got to go get the guy from Ohio State. I get it. Ohio State quarterbacks aren't great in the NFL, but I also don't care what previous quarterbacks have done. You got to believe in that guy, and that's what matters.
Okay, last one for me, James. Over-under of 7. Number of games Shaquille Leonard starts this season.
Going over. I'm going to trust that he gets back The key will be, honestly, if he is himself. Like, I don't think that he's going to be where he just doesn't play or doesn't start. The key will be, does he look like himself out there? And I guess that's maybe a cop-out. But I will go over. It's still early. We aren't, getting into the meat and potatoes of the season or the preseason, things like that. But I'll trust him that he's going to get back and be the dominant player he is, or if he's just going to be, out there in maybe a different version.
I mean, you could say this about a lot of players, James, but without that extra 1.5% motor from Shaq Leonard, though, he's a pretty pedestrian linebacker with a lot of liabilities. Is that too harsh of me to say?
No, I don't think it's too harsh. I think that it's fair, right? I mean, this league is based off of what you do and what you produce, and he said it himself. Like, he was a step slow, more than a step slow, I would think, last year. And if he comes back looking like that, then you have some serious questions to ask yourself about your linebacker group and your future with him on the franchise. Now, I know that sounds ominous, and again, I have no idea how he'll look in a few months, but again, that's stuff you have to think about because as much as you love his mindset, what he brought to your franchise, there's no guarantees. And in this league, sometimes it is cruel in great careers, don't always pan out the way that you'd like them to be. So we'll see. For his sake and as a fan of the game, I never want anybody to be hurt. So just hoping he gets back and, we can see and assess him from there.
For you two, who starts more games next year? Shaq Leonard or Gardner Minshew?
Oh, man. I'm gonna go Shaq. I think that Gardner Minshew starts, a decent amount, maybe half the season. But I would imagine if the Colts, aren't really doing much, I don't think they're gonna be a playoff team with Gardner Minshew back there. No disrespect to him, I just don't think that any quarterback, that's not a superstar is gonna really help this team become, that much better in 1 year. So I would expect maybe the back half of the season, you get the rookie quarterback in, whoever it is, maybe 4 or 5 games just to get them some experience.
See, I don't think you can rule out the possibility that whoever they draft, they hand the keys to.
Right away?
Yep. Let's go.
As a reporter covering the team, I would love that. I mean, hey, I want to cover the guy, you're trusting your franchise with, but I'm just saying if I'm Ballard or Steichen or Irsay, I don't know if I want to throw him in the fire just yet. Because as you all know, this league can make or break you, and a lot of it has to do with the infrastructure and the guidance you were given, to start off with.
Yeah, it'll be a really good debate. I think where your bye week falls could have some implications into that as well. James, as always, man, great stuff. Appreciate you hopping on, and we will see you Thursday.
Sounds good. I'm so ready for it.
Amen.
On at this point.
Amen, man. Thank you. That's James Boyd right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Yeah, the NFL schedule will come out coming up here in about mid-May. I think, where that bye week is too. Do you look at it and say, all right, week 6, week 7 bye, you sit the guy, give him a bye week to maybe ramp up. Who knows? I don't mind, though, at all, just handing the guy the keys and throwing him right in the fire.
I think that's entirely possible.
Of course, background, Ballard comes from, Kansas City where Mahomes sat for a year. Jalen Hurts sat his first year. I know Shane Steichen was still with the Chargers. Justin Herbert was going to sit until, what was it? They injected Tyror Taylor, it was a rib issue, and they injected him, too high by his lungs.
I remember that.
They punctured his lung.
That was it.
They punctured his lung with a needle.
That person had to have gotten fired, correct? Or I guess you could look at it and say maybe he didn't get fired because then that allowed Justin Herbert to start and it worked out great for him.
That seems like an uncomfortable experience. Right?
Will that rival us tomorrow, Mark?
It's maybe.
Whoa.
The Mayo just hit me right in the lung.
A Chargers team doctor accidentally punctured quarterback Tyrod Taylor's lung just before kickoff while trying to administer a pain-killing injection to the quarterback's cracked ribs.
This will kill the pain.
According to then coach
Because you won't be able to breathe.
You know how they say, if you hurt yourself, you punch your leg or something, they make the pain go elsewhere? I don't think that was what he had in mind. My ribs really hurt. Well, wait a minute. Now my chest hurts.
I mean, do you know, by the way, it's a totally different side subject, and I apologize because we're probably up against it. Do you know something fascinating? And I realize I mentioned a lot that I had a heart attack, but in this case, it's applicable because it's weird. When I came home, a week later, we're sitting on the couch, and I said to Shannon, I'm like, I have terrible chest pain. She's like, you're going back in right now. So I go back to the hospital. They run every test, and the guy comes in and goes, yep, this is exactly what I thought. And I thought, he's going to tell me they got to do everything all over again. I said, what's that? And he said, you have a strained pectoral muscle and a torn lat muscle.
You bench pressing too much?
I'm like, what? And he's like, the strain of the heart attack caused your muscles, your body to tense so much that it tore those two muscles or strained those two muscles, but your body was aware of the fact that there was a different priority to take care of. So now that your heart is on the mend, it is now making you aware of the fact that there are other things that you need to address.
Gosh, the human body.
Isn't that amazing? The human body is my point. It's amazing.
Never forget the shriek. Was it last year at the Combine when one of the offensive linemen tore his pec
can you imagine?
Mid-rep? Yeah, luckily I think Deuce Gruden, the strength coach, was right there to grab the bar.
Who was the player, do you know?
Oh, for some reason, a Big Ten school standing out.
I mean, was it somebody that ended up getting drafted?
Literally.
That sounded like that.
Literally.
Right?
I mean, it's reverberating.
What animal's that, Mark?
Through the convention center walls.
What's that again?
At the Indianapolis Combine.
So it was a San Diego State tackle.
Hold on, boys. Let me show you how to bench this.
Was that from White River and the zoo, or was that in the convention center? Kevin and Query here. Coming up 9 o'clock hour. 93.5, 107.5.
Hellsberg Diamonds presents on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
By the way, it was Billy Price of Ohio State, the center, that tore his pectoral muscle. Still went 21st overall in the NFL draft. Played for the Bengals for 3 years, then the Giants, Raiders, and now with the Arizona Cardinals. And again,
now, was that a Price animal or was that Billy himself?
What's that noise again?
Will that be Jake tomorrow when the mayo hits his lips?
When you bring no, when the mayo hits my retinas. When I see mayonnaise,
Oh, you're gonna put it in your eyes? That's an interesting move.
I'm telling you.
Look like Mrs. Doubtfire when
Boy,
she dips
you
the
got-
whipped
I'm
cream
telling you,
pie all over
curveball.
her.
Listen, you guys, what's that stuff? Do you guys, you might be too young to remember this. When you guys were kids, did they have Mr. Yuck stickers?
Yeah, oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. In the event that,
I need to get my hands on some of those.
First off, yeah, Mr. Yuck stickers, and I wouldn't have mayonnaise in my residence, but if I did, there'd be a Mr. Yuck sticker on it. But in the event that you had a young person that didn't pay attention to the Mr. Yuck sticker and ingested something that was poison, what's the name of that syrup you give them? Like Icapac syrup or whatever it's called that causes
I can picture it.
Causes an immediate recycle. That's what mayonnaise is to me. You got. I mean, I'll if you want to do this, that's fine. But I'm gonna have like a breakfast bar or something on the way in, so that
breakfast bar that'll cure it.
No, so that there's
Mayo
something
and
to
breakfast
so that
bar,
I'm not
yum.
retching and dry heaving, so that there's something that comes back up. So I'm just telling you.
Elliot has
I'm
suggested.
standing right there.
Elliot messaged me and said that you could do the banana thing that Levis has done. Just eat the banana whole.
I thought about that.
without
That's
peeling it.
I would rather do that than the spawn of the devil.
Is that
Is that doable? Like, can you do that though? That seems like that could be a task that maybe
is that a compromise you're willing to do?
your teeth just won't allow for it.
Well, that's eating a banana peel.
Yeah,
No, eating the whole thing, yeah.
you got to eat the whole thing, just
I'm
whole.
not gonna eat the whole thing.
Come on, team player.
This is like
This is
the
weak.
St. Elmo faking COVID all over again.
You're supposed to be like the veteran bull and everything, showing the young guys how to do it. And you're
Excuse me. What's that?
folding
Excuse
up
me?
shop and skipping town.
What am I, Ferdinand over here? I'm the veteran bull.
I got a guy that sends me hockey picks, by the way. He wants Carolina tonight, -160.
Guy needs to call somebody.
1-800-9 with it.
9 o'clock hour coming up. Kevin Aquarius.
Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
So this show is 7 to 10 a.m., right? 5 days a week, 7 to 10 a.m.
Well,
every
for
day.
some of us.
Are you aware of that? Sometimes I feel like you aren't.
Well, thus my confession. It's 9:04 in Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. It's technically 9:04 everywhere in the Eastern Time Zone on this Tuesday. And what is today, the 25th?
Correct.
Okay, the 25th of April. Now, between the Aztec noise of the guy ripping his pack and then my anxiety about this whole mayonnaise thing that you guys have just conjured up without, and you must have had a meeting that I wasn't a part of. Between those two things, that's me when you break out the Hellmann's. I basically at this point, I've just, for today at least, I'd like to think that I am the face of broadcast professionalism, preparedness, and 3 hours of daily commitment. Until today, I literally feel like here I'm essentially punting quarter number 3. It's not really quarter number 3; it's third number
like
3.
Elder abuse that we're giving you or something?
This is simply teamwork. Simply teamwork. We're all in this together. Sacrifices.
Yeah. Teamwork.
What
makes
sacrifice
the dream
are you guys making?
We're offering to do the coffee and mayo thing.
Yeah.
We're simpatico.
Educate and
We're ready to
entertain,
go.
correct, Mark?
We're united.
What kind of coffee do you drink?
Regular coffee. I don't know. We went over this before.
I'm not a high-end coffee drinker. I could drink gas station coffee every day.
Yeah. I have no preference.
I think the Mayo spice it up.
Yeah, we're going with whatever they got. Whatever batch they got over there in the kitchen.
Maddie's got a
batch. They have mayonnaise here?
No, the coffee. I'm bringing the mayo in. The big old Duke's.
Mark was already at the grocery over the weekend.
Sam's
You can
Club
buy
special.
Duke's tomato or mayonnaise?
Yeah.
Have you seen the
Obviously,
Mayo?
I said Duke
Have you
tomato.
seen the
but
Mayo
Duke's-
Bowl?
It's a 64-ounce jar.
Well, yeah.
It was at Sam's Club. There's plenty to go around
You
tomorrow.
bought-
We can have multiple helpings.
Remember
You
Mike
bought-
Loxley winning the Mayo Bowl? That's going to be us tomorrow.
That's not mayonnaise for 3 people. That's for Biosphere 3.
I know. Well, I'm planning ahead for the show, and I said, hey, look at that sale. Got to get on that. Throw
Mark,
it in the cart, girls. Uncle Jake is gonna have
I went to
some mayo.
Costco once and I bought a thing of cereal bars, and I still have
I have those same cereal bars.
465
Oh,
cereal
man,
bars.
$4 for 70 of these? They're all still sitting there.
Grand Prix tickets, Mark, we're giving away this week.
Yep.
So that is coming up. What is that, Jake? Like May 15th, something like that?
That is
16th.
yes. So 2 weeks from this weekend.
Is it just the mayo in general?
13th.
Would you like a Chipotle mayo, like a flavored mayo? Would that make it easier, like a Baconator
It's
kind of
the
mayo?
viscosity and texture, and in particular when it mixes with one's saliva, the look that it makes in people's mouth is all of it is disgusting, horrific. It smells terrible. It looks terrible. It tastes terrible. It ruins the most. Everything turns colors when mixed with it. It's horrific.
Man, I looked at it this morning in the fridge. It's like one more sleep. That thing was shinier than a teenage boy's forehead, man.
It is quite thick.
Everything about it is disgusting.
God, it's going to be right next to you tomorrow morning.
Did you see? Okay, I was flying to Long Beach. Let me just tell you this. I was flying to Long Beach, and I had a streak. I had a streak at one point of like, it was absurd. It was like 16 consecutive flights that I had taken where the people next to me take their shoes off. I don't know what this is. I don't know where this came from. I don't know where it originated from, but it's disgusting. It's horrific, and these people should all be banned. They should be on the no-fly list, right? But I was on my way to Long Beach. I was sitting on the aisle, and across the aisle from me was someone who took not only their shoes but their socks off. Now, did you see the foot? I took a picture of this.
And then dip the toes into mayo?
This foot was, it had crust, it had tortilla chip toenails, it was horrific, right? It was the most horrible thing I've ever seen in my life. I would rather give that person a foot massage than eat mayonnaise. mayonnaise is the most disgusting.
Well, we might have to find who that person is, Mark, and get them in studio tomorrow. Then it sounds like.
So you're saying you have a streak currently going with the flight, or you had a streak snapped? What do you?
No, unfortunately, I'm now amidst a second streak, and the guy next to me. Now here's the other thing.
I see Rex Ryan behind you. We can get him in studio if you want to go down that path.
Really beautiful feet.
I'm sitting on the aisle. The guy that was sitting in the window seat, there was no one in the middle, fortunately. He takes his shoes off. Now, he kept his socks on, but he takes his shoes off. And at one point, he says to me, I'm going to get up and go to the restroom. I said, okay. So I unbuckle and whatever to get out to let. And I sit back down and then look over, and his shoes are still sitting in his spot, which means this.
You're sitting next to Del Griffith. That's what you're
doing. This
doing.
guy went to the bathroom of the plane with no shoes on.
Yeah, now he's sitting next to you. You might have a different streak going tomorrow after this mayonnaise thing happens.
You guys will be lucky if I'm here on
He's going to call in sick. It'll be at our meeting later. I feel a little lightheaded. I think I need to go home.
I'm just telling you.
Trying to rein it back in here. Last night, Jimmy Butler, with one of the greatest performances you will see in playoff basketball, 21 in the fourth quarter, 56 for the game. I did find myself watching that, and some of it, I think, channeled back to when the Heat played the Pacers earlier this season. And does Benedict Mathurin have some of that? Of just kind of the no-nonsense, I'm not shaking your hand after a game. Mathurin probably honestly takes it to another level. Like, he wants no part
He has kind of that same focus, doesn't he?
And he wants no part of being chummy with anybody. And him and Butler, I think, had a couple of moments like that in the regular season. Obviously, a long way to go before you achieve what Jimmy Butler has, but I think we also forget it's not like Jimmy Butler walked in the NBA and averaged 20 a game. He averaged 2 a game his rookie year. 2. And now is looked at as a guy that has this ability, particularly in the playoffs, to have these takeover type of moments without being some guy that's dunking on you on every possession or, knocking down 6 or 7 threes a game.
The thing about Jimmy Butler is he doesn't have necessarily, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a quick first step, but he just has like this amazing body control where he's really strong so he can go right to the basket. But if need be, he can stop and pull up. And when he gets hot, especially in the mid-range game, I mean, it's lights out. Like he can catch it in a bottle quickly. And that team, Miami is just the perfect place for him because they have perfect role players that all know exactly their role and perfectly float around what it is that he's doing. And Bam Adebayo is a great player as well.
They're a very talented 8 seed.
They are. Yes, because they were hurt all year. I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, they're healthy now. Like, Tyler Hero was hurt most of the year. Adebayo, I think, missed some time. I mean, they've got some and Eric Spoelstra can flat out coach. He reminds me, I watch a lot of Miami Heat games, actually, and the Heat remind me of the Butler teams under Brad Stevens and the fact that they just seem to have a better idea at all times as to where the basketball's going, and they're just a step ahead, quite frankly, and they hang around games where you don't think, they're down 4, 5, most, and then all of a sudden they get the lead 3/4 of the way through the game, and then all of a sudden it's up to 5, and then it's up to 8, and then it's up to 10. You're like, oh my gosh, they're going to win this game. That's what they do in the way they play. They're just a very well. If you like the game of basketball and you're one of the purists at the NBA level, Miami does it pretty admirably.
It's pretty rare to find guys like Butler that just his game goes to another level come playoff time. Again, I know the words can be a bit cliche from intensity and competitor and all of that. It fits him absolutely perfectly. And, I do think if you're a Benedict Mathurin, looking at him, looking at a Drew Holiday and the ability to play on both ends of the floor, just be locked into this series. Be locked in to this series. Are you guys surprised at all about this? Miami and Milwaukee right now. Again, Miami's up 3-1. The series back to Milwaukee for Game 5. Milwaukee is plus 128 to win the series. So that is a $10 bet to win $12.80. Are you surprised that it is that close to even money for Milwaukee to come back from 3-1 down?
Yes. I mean, they're in a world of hurt here. Because, to your point, Miami is really good.
And the Miami core has kind of been there, done this before.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, it's a group that's been to the finals, right?
Yeah, bubble finals.
I mean,
and in game one, when Giannis played, and I know he exited somewhat early, but Miami still had a lead when he exited. I think almost a double-digit lead. They won, in Milwaukee in game one there. It was pretty special last night to watch that from Butler, and then I did find it fitting and had to laugh when LeBron hits the shot to go into overtime over Dillon Brooks.
Dillon Brooks, man. Somebody said it best. They sent me a text. Dillon Brooks is a poor man's Lance Stevenson.
See, I think it's a little different. I think Dillon Brooks has more like villain hate into it, whereas Lance teetered a little bit more on playful.
Well, Lance Stevenson's were never intentional.
And again, people could send me videos that might think otherwise, but like it just seems, and maybe I'm being biased just in our own backyard, and maybe we knew Lance a little bit better, but it just seems like Brooks has got a little bit more like just spite. And the fact that, again, he continues not to like confront it after he's already talked, either with his play on the court or his comments off the court.
I don't remember him in college being that kind of a guy. Like, I don't know where it came about. And
correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it was a different Oregon player. Wasn't he like the Oregon player that Coach K like stopped in the handshake line and talked to for like 3 or 4 minutes?
I mean, I think he was really well respected coming out of Oregon, right?
It's almost like he has seen the Lance Stevenson and is like, watch this. I'm going to take it to another level.
Memphis just seems to have a high threshold of knuckleheads, right?
So he pointed out, they are, Dan, a listener pointed out a little bit earlier, they do, I think, miss Steven Adams. He's a guy that's been out here in the playoffs. I mean, they're right there. I mean, they had a great chance. I mean, hell, if they got one defensive stop last night, it's 2-2, and now they have home court.
Did you ever see
the best of 3 series?
One of the Superman movies, I think it was like Superman 3, where they had the 3 aliens that like come down that always had like the little mirror thing down below them. Does that make sense at all, what I'm talking about?
I've never seen the old Superman movies.
Does anybody listening remember like Superman 3 where it had like the 3 people that had like the little thing? It was like, I don't even know how to describe it. That's what Steven Adams looks like. He looks like one of the villains from the Superman movies, but he's a heck of a player. I've always thought Steven Adams, you and I've talked about it, Kevin, like that's exactly kind of what the Pacers need is like just a big enforcer body like that. I thought Daniel Tice could be that guy. Obviously he wasn't. But there's a reason Steven Adams has lasted this long in the league because he just brings something to the table that is very hard to replicate.
All I see is Superman aliens, and it's the aliens from the Ridley Scott Sigourney Weaver thing.
I think we've mentioned before Steven Adams, the crazy like sibling Steven Adams story. He's the youngest of 17.
17?
17. I think the average height for the males is like 6'8" or 6'9", and the average height for the females in the family is like 6 foot.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Superman 2, everyone is telling me.
Why do I feel like that's like nowhere to be found in an American family?
What, Superman 2? I don't know. It's wildly popular.
17 siblings. The males are 6'9", and the females are 6 foot.
General Zod, several people have pointed out. But Superman 2, I'm telling you, it's not General Zod. I'll find this eventually.
This makes for great radio here.
About 11:15.
All of us imagining
Jake
this.
checking his IMDb pages. Where's that?
Listen, Todd Meyer is joining in the conversation, right? He's our boss, or one of them. So if he's down with it, we're good. Okay, you guys just follow the old bull here. Isn't that what you called me earlier?
This old bull needs to go out to pasture. I feel like you're all lost in the weeds right now.
Okay,
I'm pretty bummed about this De'Aaron Fox injury.
Yeah, that stinks.
It does.
Is that it for the Kings?
Boy, if he's not able to go, I mean that's
doubtful, right, for tomorrow night?
Yeah, that's. I mean,
it seems like the miss by Harrison Barnes, Draymond in Game 3, and now this. Like that's kind of like the triple whammy almost of. Obviously, without Draymond, you had an opportunity in Game 3. Barnes having that look there on Sunday, that miss, and now the Fox injury. By the way, no Kawhi Leonard tonight for the Clippers. They are down 3-1. So injuries have been an unfortunate storyline here in these round 1 series.
By the way, the name of the character in Superman 2, Evildoer. Oh, it is.
Are we still on this?
No, okay. Yes, they report to General Zod. There's 3 of them, and it looks just like Steven Adams. When the day comes when your kids want to watch Superman and then Superman 2, which is going to be like 15 years from now, I'm not even going to be around anymore, but you're going to say to yourself, I get it now. Jake was right. That looks like Steven Adams. That's what you're going to say to yourself. And then you're going to feel bad. And then you're going to say, that was just the day before we killed him with the mayonnaise. Right?
Let me go to his shrine over at Crown Hill.
So are you going to do the banana or the mayo? Or both?
Ooh, banana with mayo on top.
Over the peel?
And through the woods. To grandmother's house we go.
I'm telling you. You guys can try all you'd like. The mayonnaise thing, highly unlikely.
I've got some baby spoons I can bring in. Like I said, we can do the airplane. Coming in for a landing.
You try that all you like.
Mike sent me a picture of the Kentucky-Florida football game from this year. The box score from that game. That was a game where Kentucky beat Florida 26-16. Combined third downs in that game, 8 of 29. Pretty ugly. He goes, you're telling me the QBs in this game are both going to be in the top 4 in the draft? Get the bleep out of here.
Get the mayonnaise out of here. That's what it says.
Again, I think this is what makes the draft at times, for probably the personnel people more than any, bang your head against the wall. We talked about the 2018 draft. Baker Mayfield has the iconic plant the flag at the midfield of the horseshoe. They win at Ohio State. Sam Darnold throws for 350 against Stanford and has a huge Rose Bowl. And Josh Allen, the 37% completion percentage against Oregon, turns out to be by far the best pro.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to with Josh Allen. And this goes along with what Ross Tucker was saying to us as a pause with C.J. Stroud. With Josh Allen, I think the Buffalo Bills notably were the team that said, say what you want about his completion percentage. Let's look at who he's throwing to. And I understand that would be also reason on the other side of it with C.J. Stroud to be like, yeah, I don't know. He's throwing to guys that are 2 yards ahead of everybody else, and he's used to that window being open.
Is that the sort of risk the Colts need to take? I know that you probably disagree with that. But again, Buffalo looking at the Josh Allen risk. Is that the Anthony Richardson type of risk?
That is a good question.
Because Buffalo was getting to playoffs. They were a fine franchise. Kansas City was getting to playoffs with Alex Smith. But do you need to swing a little bit bigger? And trust Shane Steichen.
And again, I would say I'm 100% on board with what you're saying, Kevin, but my pause comes down to the fact that for the general manager, it is not his first quarterback swing. Maybe in the terms of the draft it is, but it's not his first quarterback swing. And I keep defaulting to this in my mind, and that is that maybe it wasn't Chris Ballard. Maybe it was Frank Reich, but Chris Ballard was ultimately where the final buck stops aside from the owner, and he went to the owner and said, I want to make a trade, give up assets, and ask you to open up your pocketbook for a guy that I think is our quarterback. And that guy turned out to be arguably the most sour imprint on Jim Irsay of any player that he's paid money to in the last 15 years. And Jim Irsay is the one that said, I'm not doing it anymore with this guy, with Carson Wentz. I'm not doing it. We'll trade him for a half-eaten bag of chili cheese Fritos if we have to, but I'm not doing it anymore. You asked me to open up my pocketbook, and you made a trade, and you told me this was the guy. And so for that, if I'm Chris Ballard, the second go-round now with the quarterback experiment, draft, not trade, I'm saying I've got to go with the one that gives me the least chance of the owner coming back to me and saying, why did we take this guy?
Yeah, I feel like if Ballard is going to do that or think that way, Irsay just needs to say, Shane Steichen, you make the call. Shane Steichen's got the best quarterback resume. This is where the Colts need to have some third party enter the building. And I know this is not how it works, but you have some third party that walks in the building and says, hey, Jim, show me your quarterback resume. Oh, Peyton Manning 1 overall, Andrew Luck 1 overall. Chris, show me your quarterback resume. Oh, that's what it looks like? Shane Steichen, show me your quarterback resume. Oh, that's what it looks like. Okay, this decision will be made by Shane Steichen.
Do you ever have people that just disappoint you, just let you down, disappoint you? Where you just say to yourself, I thought better.
Well, I probably am feeling one right now.
I'll feel that tomorrow when you don't participate with Kevin and I.
This from Dave Calabro. I've got to stick up for mayonnaise, my friend. Every Hoosier loves mayonnaise except for you. Sitting in turn 1 with ham and cheese and mayo. Well, I'm in turn 3, and we don't do it that way.
Zod, Ursa, and Nan were the 3 Kryptonians in the Phantom Zone. That might be the nerdiest sentence I've ever said.
I'm just telling you.
Calabro doesn't strike me as a mayo guy. Does he put mayo in that hair?
What's that?
Does he put mayo in that hair?
Now we do know there was the one fellow that put mayonnaise in his hair, right,
yeah.
Mark?
It really, really works.
Isn't that what he said?
Mm-hmm. Let me find out.
He smelled. What was it? It was My Strange Addiction or one of those TV shows?
Smell like an egg salad sandwich, but it really, really works.
We've broken Jake.
A pair of Grand Prix tickets. Is that right, Mark?
Yes, 2 tickets.
Yeah. So you can go to the Grand Prix and eat your mayonnaise and ham and cheese sandwiches.
Along with the Jiffy Lube oil change. That's what we'll be giving away on the pop quiz all week long. 317-239-1070 for that. Morning Checkdown time.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Thank you. Lara Overton. Mayonnaise is putrid, she sends me. Thank you, right? Who would you rather go to lunch with, Lara Overton or Dave Calabro?
I don't think Mark and I have ever said mayonnaise is terrific. It's just making a sacrifice that we're all a team together and we're all going to do this together.
Well, okay.
FTS, man, for the show.
Oh, that's our new logo?
Well, we don't have any T-shirts that we've written up yet, so why not? Add that to the pile.
I guess we've thrown in the towel on PBR.
Keyword there is yes.
Right?
Speaking of T-shirts.
No, that's still happening at some point. I'll have it at my place or something.
A lot of playoff T-shirts right now, and we've got 3 series that could all end tonight. That would be Boston, Game 5 at home over Atlanta. They're up 3-1. Denver also up 3-1. They are home with Minnesota. And then the final game of the night, again, no Kawhi Leonard as the Clippers try to stave off elimination. No Paul George either. Phoenix up 3-1 in that series. We getting a clean sweep tonight? All the home teams getting it done?
No, there will be a visiting team to win. Please allow me to look once again at the schedule right before me and tell you which one it'll be. I'm going to go with, oh boy. No, I take that back. The home teams are going to sweep, yes.
No, it was
I can't see which one of those.
That was a bit of a 180.
That was a Memphis Grizzlies type turn. That was a very quick 180.
You don't think Minnesota and Denver?
You know, people often mistake that and say you did a 360. It's not a 360.
It's a 180.
You were right back where you were.
Yeah.
Minnesota would have the best chance of those 3, but I'll tell you, Denver is really good. I mean,
9.5-point underdog Minnesota. Boston 13.5-point favorite, and the Suns 12.5-point favorite. And last night the Heat, they go up 3-1 on the Bucks. That is an 8 seed over a 1, so they can clinch with just one more win. And the Lakers go up 3-1 over Memphis, with that series shifting back to Memphis. And no De'Aaron Fox tomorrow night. Was it the ring finger on a shooting hand? Is that what it was?
It's the index finger.
Index finger?
Yeah.
On a shooting hand.
It's like a chip in the bone, which is really uncomfortable sounding.
She's doubtful. That'll be a 10 o'clock tip tomorrow night back in Sacramento.
NHL playoffs. New Jersey over the Rangers 3-1. It was Toronto over the Lightning 5-4. The Golden Knights over the Jets 4-2. And the Kraken. I always want to say Kraken. Seattle Kraken.
Incorrect.
3-2. Well, I understand that. Over the Colorado Avalanche. That means that Seattle and Colorado were tied at 2 games apiece. It's a 3-1 lead for Vegas. It's a 3-1 lead for Toronto. And the Rangers and Devils, thanks to Putty's win last night, tied at 2 games apiece as well.
For the Devils.
Today, the Colts will start their voluntary minicamp. It's a 3-day Minicamp, they're allowed to do this with a first-year head coach. Obviously, it'll be Gardner Minshew leading the show on that front. Ahead of Thursday's draft, the Aaron Rodgers trade finalized. You good with that for Green Bay?
I thought Green Bay could have gotten more, to be honest with you. I was surprised by it. Although it is obviously a guy at the end of his career, but still, it just felt like it would have been a bigger haul than that.
Jets make the playoffs this year?
Yeah, I'm going to go with no also, just because that. If the Jets were in the AFC South, absolutely, but that division's loaded, man.
Last year they were 7-4 entering December, certainly in the playoffs at that point, and just fell apart from an offensive standpoint to close out the year. But I agree. I do think the AFC East is loaded. I will say that they do make the playoffs, though.
They're a wild card in that case. They're not winning the division, right?
I'll say they are a wild card, and they do make the playoffs. If you're looking for something to do tonight, Indy Fuel in action playoff game up there at the Coliseum tonight and Thursday. They've got Toledo in their round one series. They're down 2-0 right now in their playoff series.
Do you know that there was a manager, Eddie White just sent me the baseball card of manager Mayo Smith?
Yeah, I saw that, Eddie. Fire that in there.
Well, that guy, he sucked as a manager, let me tell you.
About your favorite NBA player,
Team
OJ
usually
Mayo.
playing catch-up. What's that?
OJ Mayo, your favorite NBA player?
Nope. OJ Mayo, there's a reason he's been banned from the league, and thank goodness that fax was late. That's all I got to say.
Banned from the league, is he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know why? Because the NBA knows what they're doing, and they didn't want any more Mayo. They said, hold the Mayo.
For Josh McRoberts, 37 straight trade deadlines.
Well, remember the fax was late. That was allegedly, that was David Morway that was trying to fax it in, and the fax was a minute too late. And so the trade did not go through, and O.J. Mayo, thank goodness, the NBA was like, nah, we got enough Mayo in Indy. Yes, thank you. We don't need any more of it.
Could have driven the pace car for the
There's a reason the top brand of it is called Hell Man, right?
I mean, it's doing something if it's got a bowl game.
Well, that's the other one. That's the Dukes folks.
Mm-hmm. Clearly doing something right.
Okay.
A pair of tickets to the Grand Prix coming up on May 13th. That is a Saturday.
Bring your Mayo to turn 3.
That will be up for, turn... What are you in for that one, Jake? You're probably in some obscure
I'm in turn
there.
1 of the oval, which is turns 12 and 13 of the road course.
Okay. Well, there you know.
We'll do that and Jiffy Lube oil change up for grabs on the pop quiz coming up next. 317-239-1070.
At 1075thefan.com. Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with Kevin and Query. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
You know what the first question's going to be, don't you?
It's the hardest pop quiz I've ever seen.
We got to figure out which. More people are in my camp on this Mayo thing than one thinks. I know.
I think Kevin and I are kind of there too. It's just.
I know Calabra's like, come on. He asked me, so you also hate Miracle Whip? Yes. It's a miracle that they could whip up something like that was still as disgusting as mayonnaise. Yes,
it's all about sacrifices in life. Mark and I are willing to go there.
Yeah.
Well, that's, you know what? I commend you both.
Again, you're going to have a letter from Mottman, a note from Mottman tomorrow morning that will get you out of it.
Guys, I was so amped to do this, but look.
You know what? I'm gonna ask Mottman right now what he thinks of mayonnaise.
Well, you need to offer some context.
That's what he wants.
Say, hey, is it okay if I have a spoonful of mayonnaise in my coffee tomorrow?
How about is
that
mayo
plop right in there?
Yeah.
Is mayonnaise good for the heart? How's that?
No, that's
mayonnaise a day keeps the doctor away.
Yeah.
All right, a pair of tickets to the Grand Prix, right, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what happens.
No matter what happens.
All right.
Even if you go 0 for 5.
And I have a feeling Scotty, this is brutal. I mean, obscure baseball questions to the nth degree. Number 1 through 8 here. Jake, a number?
I'll go with number 4.
4. Who we got?
Kevin.
Oh, Kevin. Hey, Kevin.
Good morning, fellas.
Kevin, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. How you guys doing?
Good. Are you a Mayo fan?
I am a big Mayo fan.
On what? Or just straight?
French fries. I did my French fries right in that stuff. It's delicious.
Wow, interesting.
So, Jake, you have plenty of options for tomorrow.
Okay. What other sorts of like disgusting things do you enjoy in your life, Kevin?
God,
boy, jeez.
How long have you been a communist?
Should we take this off air?
Kevin, how old a fella are you?
I graduated in the mid-'90s.
From high school or college?
From high school. I'm an Athenian.
Oh, nice. I'm going to pass that here in a few, probably about less than an hour on my way to Bloomington.
And,
all right.
Kevin, what sort of line of work are you in now?
I own my own lawn care business.
Oh, okay. That's impressive. Sir. Okay.
Any tips for us from a lawn care standpoint as we get ready to start that time of year?
Fertilize.
Well, you know what a very common fertilizer is?
Urea.
Mayonnaise.
Oh.
Equally disgusting, right?
Kevin, what's my best remedy when I get to like September or October to keep things looking decent when March rolls around?
Aerate.
Really?
Yes, sir.
That seems way above my pay grade.
Aerate and overseed at that point.
God, can I aerate? Like, am I smart enough to do that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, all right. I'm going to have to talk to you off air, Kevin.
Kevin, if you were given your choice and you could pick any one sports team to win their next championship, who would you pick? Not I'm saying who you would want, not who you're predicting, but if a genie said to you, I have the ability to have one team win a championship, you would pick what team?
I'm a huge St. Louis Cardinals fan. Grew up in Evansville.
Okay.
Boy, talk about a rough start to the year.
Talk about a rough start to this segment. You like mayonnaise and the Cardinals.
Who's more disappointing, the Cardinals, Reds, or the White Sox right now?
White Sox are in the.
Yeah,
it's tough. Those the Cardinals, I'll tell you.
Well, where are you going to go?
Who's your favorite Cardinal of all time, Kevin?
8,800 fans for the Reds last night.
Oh, probably Pujols.
Okay, that's hard to argue. I got it.
Kevin, appreciate you calling.
I saw Ozzy play many times.
I was stunned when I worked in St. Louis and covered the Cardinals, Kevin. The guy that was a fan favorite that I don't know that people outside St. Louis realized was a fan favorite during his tenure was Willie McGee. People still love Willie McGee in St. Louis.
Willie McGee and Tommy Herr, yes, sir.
He looks like he could use some mayo on the sandwich. Okay, here we go. Question
Kevin,
number 1 for you, Kevin.
My first 2 sport autographs, Tom Pagnozzi and Ozzie Smith as a 6-year-old.
It's pretty impressive.
Little
one for 2.
Spring training down there, and I forget exactly where in Florida. All right, Jake, you want to throw one?
Question number 1. Name one of the 2 teams currently riding 7-game winning streaks in Major League Baseball. They also, by the way, paired up for the 1979 World Series?
Pirates.
Boom. All right, number 2, Kevin. LeBron had 22 points and 20 rebounds in the Lakers' win over the Grizzlies last night at 38 years of age. He's now the oldest to have a 2020 double-double in NBA playoff history. Whose record did he break? His own? Wilt Chamberlain? Boy, Kevin, you got some energy here. Do you know the answer?
He said Wilt. Okay, question 3 for you, Kevin. The other answer to go with the Pirates, which you correctly got on question number 1, is the Baltimore Orioles. What is my nickname for the Baltimore Orioles franchise?
Happy guy.
Happy Gilmore.
Happy guys, yeah.
Happy days, right? Isn't that what you're going for there?
It's actually the same initials as the position that, I'm trying to think of who the greatest ever to play that position was. Ken Griffey Jr. played, for example. CF are the initials. Okay. Anyway, the actual question for number 3, it was cute fellow, by the way. The actual question for number 3 is this, Kevin. In NBA playoff history, who scored the most points in a game in which he collected at least 20 rebounds? Was it LeBron James, the aforementioned Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, or Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon?
Oh, Scotty. Let's go with Hakeem the Dream.
That was great. All right, Kevin, on this day in 1876, of course, the Chicago Cubs played their first game as members of the NL, defeating Louisville 4-0 in the first shutout in NL history. What was the nickname of the Chicago franchise in 1876? A, the Cubs, B, the Orphans, C, the Colts, or D, the White Stockings?
White Stockings.
Nice. All right, question 5. Giants starting pitcher Alex Cobb threw his second career shutout, blanking the Cards, your Cardinals, last night 4-0. His first shutout came in His first shutout came in August of 2012 against the Athletics. The almost 11-year gap between first and second career shutouts is the third longest in Major League history. Who holds the record? And it also is Axl Rose's legitimate name, first and last name. Bill Bailey, Doc White, Carmen Hill, or Red Barrett?
Red Baron.
Red Barrett. Is that what you're going with?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, Scotty, what in the world on 4 and 5? Like, come on. I mean, kudos to Kevin for getting one of the 2 right. Kevin, pretty good. I thought it was a very difficult pop quiz. Congrats on the pair of Grand Prix tickets. Yes, the 7-game win streaks right now in Major League Baseball, the Orioles or the Pirates.
Correcto.
Wilt Chamberlain was correct for question number 2.
That was LeBron's first 2020 game?
That's his first 20 rebound game.
Wow. Interesting.
Really?
LeBron's first 20 rebound game in his career.
Okay.
Number 3, this is where he slipped up. 3 and 5. He got White Stockings correct. Number 3, Hakeem Olajuwon was the guest there. Who scored the most points in a game which he collected 20 rebounds? No, it was Elgin Baylor. Bill Bailey for 5.
Mottman has responded.
You don't get to come back tomorrow. You don't even get a lousy copy of our home game. You're a complete loser.
So I texted Mottman and said, is mayonnaise good for the heart?
That's clearly a no.
I mean, yeah.
His response.
I don't need to go to the medical school that Mottman went to tell you that.
So are you telling me that I should or should not go with Mottman's response?
Well, let's hear what it is.
Yeah.
No, I'm asking you. Should I or should I not?
I think you should. I think it's a nice sacrifice to make.
You think I should go with whatever Mottman says to do?
No, I think you should go with Mark and I.
Mm-hmm.
So I should not adhere to Mottman's advice. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Mottman said, not good for you, but go for it. YOLO.
There you go. See, I told
you guys just said you override him.
Like I said, he's a doctor. Hell yeah, go with him.
Yeah,
he's got a big draft pick coming up tomorrow or Thursday night.
That is
he realizes that there's sacrifices in life that you just can't pass up. So.
Okay.
I mean, don't you think in a way the warmness of the coffee will disintegrate some of the mayo?
It doesn't matter. It's still there, right?
Yeah, it's probably pretty hard to deconstruct mayo. All right, we'll do it one. God, is it going to rain today? That looks kind of ugly over Riley Towers.
It's not good.
We'll do it one final time here, Kevin and Corey.
5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Hey, Jake, this from Dale. Do you like ranch? Negative.
Really? Now that's blasphemy.
I like ranch flavoring, like seasoning. Like Cool Ranch Doritos. But in terms of a dressing, negative.
Wow.
That viscosity and it's disgusting.
So when you get wings, you just like sitting there with like no condiments, no sauces, nothing.
Sure, I have like barbecue sauce on it.
Oh, okay.
I feel like ranch is a different consistency than like mayo. To me is pretty thick.
Yeah.
Now
ranch, you can get it relatively runny.
Mm-hmm.
That's even more horrific. Explain this to me.
You call us communists?
Yeah, I don't follow that one at all.
How about this? Jake, I'm with you halfway on the mayonnaise. I put a thin layer on a sandwich, but if I can taste it, the sandwich is ruined. Well, then...
Why would you put it on there, then?
Right.
Again, I am not by any means carrying some mayo flag at the Mayo Bowl coming up next year.
No, Kevin.
But I will consume mayo tomorrow, and I think it's a good first impression.
It's like communism. You're not kind of a communist, right?
The whole communism seems a tad aggressive.
Well, so does forcing someone to eat what they immediately will projectile vomit.
There will be no forcing.
Yeah, you can just sit at the table with the uncool kids.
I think it'll be a good first impression. Or maybe we'll have Will Levis on the show Friday if he's the first pick.
Will Levis himself has admitted that the whole thing was blown out of proportion.
Yeah, I have heard that from him.
Didn't he say that like he and his girlfriend they had made coffee and then she's like, oh my gosh, we're out of the creamer, and he's like, so as a joke he put mayo in it?
Yeah, I don't know the full story, but I do think it's a tad overblown. Mark, have you seen this? Like, these draft odds are now pulling them off the board.
Pulling Levis off the board?
DraftKings is taking down all their props and picks 1 through 5.
Interesting.
Will Levis on PointsBet is now 10-1 to go number 1.
What is happening?
What was he before?
50-1. Again, I don't. Obviously, gambling's become more and more prevalent, but I don't recall this much unknown.
I've never seen this much of a wild swing.
Yeah,
like through this.
You know why?
Season.
I really think
there's no solid number 1
correct.
Or number 2.
That's
well,
it.
I think Bryce Young at 1 seems to be relatively solid.
That I would agree, but I'm saying the other quarterbacks, I think it's interchangeable. I'm just telling you, like.
Well, I think the decision makers are different. You got 4 new head coaches, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think of the GM head coaching pair, thought I saw of the first 11 picks, only 2 of the 11 are from last year.
I mean,
I think that's playing a big part in this.
Currently on FanDuel, Levis is plus 175 to go number 2 overall. The favorite to go number 3 overall is Tyree Wilson at the moment.
So right now, if you follow Vegas, C.J. Stroud would be there at 4.
Yep.
I'm going to ask.
Do you think they would take C.J. Stroud over Anthony Richardson? No questions asked.
I would if I'm the Colts.
The Colts, yes, I do believe they would. I'm going to ask a really dumb question to you guys. If you wager on one of the apps or sites or in Vegas on who's going to be the number 3 pick, is it contingent upon who's selecting? In other words, does the trade get, or does the wager get void if the team trades out?
No, it just says number 4 overall pick,
simply
number 3
the
overall pick.
selection.
There's no association with team.
You're kind of playing with fire there, right? Because it's probably 50. Is one of the questions, will Arizona, like what franchise, can you wager on a parlay whether or not Arizona is going to select 3rd?
Well, so then you can get position of teams' first-round picks. So you can say, like, what position will the Colts draft with their first-round pick? So you can take quarterback, all that stuff. That seems to be as deep as it goes as far as that's concerned.
We're not at, like, this part of the sports calendar, but coming up in about a month, you start to get into, all right, we're only left with a couple NBA teams, NHL playoffs for those that get into that are done. And I do enjoy watching a little bit of the college baseball.
Oh, it's great.
And how that kind of bleeds into Omaha. I was looking at something yesterday. Indiana State is 10th right now in the college baseball RPI.
Yeah, they had a couple of really impressive wins at the beginning of the year.
They beat Vanderbilt last week. I thought I saw they have the hardest schedule in the nation. It's kind of wild to think of like a mid-major. And I know Indiana State's conference is usually pretty good
they've had
at baseball. And they've made the tournament, a few times here lately. Indiana also really up there this year. I think I saw they were 13th. I think Notre Dame, of course, made it to Omaha last year.
I believe that you and I have talked about this before, Kevin. As a matter of fact, I'm sure we did last year when it was going on. The College World Series in Omaha, that would be a super fun thing to go with.
It's a bucket list item for me.
It'd be great. Additionally, on television, I think the softball World Series is vastly underrated to watch.
Yeah, it's great pace to it.
It is, man. I mean, and like, I don't know, the diamonds are just, it's small. I mean, those girls wallop the ball, and like the shortstop, second base, I mean, the field looks so much smaller. And there was the girl last year for Oklahoma that hit, and I don't know if there's a record or not, 191 home runs she hit during the softball World Series. And I'm like, why are they pitching to her? She literally at one point hit like 5 straight home runs at bats. I'm like,
didn't they lose? Wasn't that like a huge upset?
I think they won, didn't they?
Maybe they lost just one game. My wife and I actually almost went to a high school softball game last night. One of her former volleyball players plays softball, and there's part of me I was like, you know what? I've always heard that, and obviously watching it, the pace of the game is great. Plus, they have the great cheers. Remember the cemetery cheer that I did?
How'd that go again?
Welcome to your cemetery. Boom, 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 boom. This is where you will be buried. Boom, 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 boom.
That they're chanting that in the crowd, or I mean in the field,
dugout as the opposing player comes up to bat.
Yeah, that's incredibly intimidating stuff there, boy.
That's being played at Jake's shrine at some point. This is where you will be buried. Boom, 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 boom.
I don't remember what it is that you're supposed to have written on my tombstone now.
I don't know. It was like 48 words. I don't remember.
Well,
it's quite the business card. Size 8 font is what Mark decided. Clean sweep. Is that what we decided on, Jake? You kind of did a 180 there. Celtics, Nuggets, and Suns tonight.
They all close out tonight. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Get no Kawhi Leonard in that final game tomorrow night. That's where I think we have 4 games coming up tomorrow night. We'll get that series started back up with Sacramento and Golden State. That is 2-2. De'Aaron Fox out. We'll also see if Cleveland can stay alive at home. They're down 3-1 right now to the Knicks. And then we'll get Lakers, Grizzlies Game 5, Heat, Bucks Game 5. Both of those games, obviously, we saw last night. Thank you to Ross Tucker. Thank you to James Boyd. Tomorrow, Charles Davis, Mark.
Yep.
From NFL Network. He's going to join us. Always enjoy chatting with him. Everybody have a great Tuesday. And the Mayo.
107.5 The Fan is